Welcome, everybody, back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today is what many would call, I would argue, the best holiday of the year, the first full slate of NFL games. And it lived up to it, especially with the closing game. We got an awesome Sunday night showdown between the Rams and the Lions, a revenge game, of course, for both Stafford and Goff. Goes to OT. The Lions end up marching down the field, coming out with a win. We're going to talk about every game today, to be clear. So every fan, get excited. We'll talk about your team, or maybe get ready to be depressed because the reality is half your team's lost. But we're starting with the grand finale. What was your biggest takeaway from the Sunday night game, Logan?
I mean, I think that the Rams and Lions are on pretty equal footing. I think you saw that, this game goes to OT. I do think the Lions are a better team, and they finally got back to their identity, the running game. I couldn't, for the life of me, understand why they threw the ball so much in the second half. Like, Jared Goff was clearly off a little bit, and the running game was working. Like, they dominated up front when they gave the rock to Montgomery, and the last two drives, the Rams defense just was gassed, man. They were tired at the end. That final drive where they get marched on, and then in overtime, too, when they end up just getting in the end zone. Like, I don't know if they threw the ball once on that drive. I think they're on equal footing, though. And the great equalizer to me is how explosive this Rams offense can be. Like, it's a really great offense. I worry about this offensive line a little bit because Detroit did a good job getting pressure. They just didn't get a whole lot of sacks because they did such a good job of getting rid of the ball early. And credit to Detroit, too. They did a great job of bending and not breaking in this game, too. Multiple drives. They force a turnover on downs in the red zone. They hold LA to a field goal in the red zone twice, actually. But I don't think these teams are that far apart. The Rams are down a couple of offensive linemen. Puka Nacua goes out very early in this game. And Stafford and Kupp kind of have a classic Stafford and Kupp game. Kupp looked amazing tonight. Fantastic, man. I'm hoping he's back to his offensive player of the year kind of days, and we could maybe see maybe another career year for Cooper Kupp, man. I think when you have a quarterback like this, an offensive genius like McVay, the Rams have such a brilliant offense, and I thought they came equipped with a really good offensive game plan that played directly against Detroit's hands. It's just not enough. Their defense doesn't hold up. Ultimately, they don't run the ball too well in this one, and they do have a pretty costly turnover, even though Jared Goff gives them one back. But I don't think the margins are that far, but I think the difference maker is the fact that the Lions just have a reliable offensive formula. They can run the ball down basically anybody's throat, and they're the strongest trench team in football, man. I thought their advantage at the line of scrimmage was pronounced throughout this game.
It's interesting to me that your takeaway is that these teams are on very even footing because we disagreed on the Rams preseason more than just about any other team out there. You had them in your NFC title game. I had them winning just 8 games, third in their own division, out of the playoffs. And I think a big cause for that difference was our outlook on the defense. I thought losing Raheem Morris, who was a very good defensive play caller, losing Aaron Donald, of course, the greatest defensive tackle the game has ever seen, and losing Ernest Jones, who was a really valuable, important, versatile piece to that defense that wasn't even good last year, that was 19th in yards per drive allowed, 19th in points per drive allowed. I thought this could be one of the weaker defenses in football. I will say they impressed me today. I thought that they were flying around. I thought that they played really hard, and they really were not exposed for much of this game. But I do think that you see the difference in overtime. It is a concerning stretch from the Rams defense, which just gets absolutely gashed physically. The Lions are dominant in the trenches. They are an incredible rushing attack. That is where they excel as a football team, and they can do that to a lot of teams. But that could never happen to a defense with Aaron Donald, right? You could not run up the middle over and over and over again like that. I mean, you mentioned the final drive. The Lions march 70 yards. They throw the football once. Every other play is a run, and they're getting great push up front. Montgomery is carrying dudes multiple yards. That's a meaningful difference to me because although I think these are both very good offenses, I do think the Lions have more defensive talent. I think the Lions are especially better up front defensively where they can dictate games at the point of attack and they can get meaningful pressure in a way that the Rams don't. But even the offensive formulas, acknowledging that the Rams are really, really good there, it required so much Matt Stafford heroics, right? He's having to escape the pocket. He's having to flip the ball out to dudes and find guys with that improvisational style. Cooper Kupp carrying an insane load with Puka Nacua out, and hopefully he's able to return from injury. And it was impressive, but when it comes down to it, what do the Lions have to do in overtime? I mean, they don't have to sweat. They don't have to take a single risk. They just run the football down your throat. You see some nice play calling from Ben Johnson early with the reverse. I thought that was a testament to another strength of their team, that they have one of the best offensive coordinators in football. But there are stretches late in this game where I'm like, I trust Matt Stafford more than Jared Goff. And so it feels like the Rams have the advantage. But overall, the more significant advantage is just having the better offensive personnel and having a way, way better offensive line. And of course, the Rams are down Rob Havenstein. He's injured. They're down Jackson. He's suspended. But even at full strength, like, there's still a big gap. So I do like the Rams. I was impressed in this game. I do think that maybe I undersold them a bit, but I still think there's probably nobody in football who has a more sustainable formula than the Lions. Everybody else needs heroics from the quarterback position. Everybody else needs exceptional playmaking. The Lions just run the ball down your throat, and they open up the play action, and they have great play calling. And that is really hard to stop when they lock in and just play to their strengths like they did in overtime.
I mean, it's old school classic football, man. That's what's going to win you games in the playoffs. And like you mentioned too, you don't need a great game from Jared Goff. Frankly, I thought this was a pretty bad game from Jared Goff. Like, you do have the one interception. That one, not that I right away. He puts that ball in harm's way, yes, but it's like a bang-bang collision right as it, his receiver's meeting the guy there. You're expecting your guy to win one-on-one. For me, the bigger issue was him just being off target, off time on some throws, and just wasn't effective enough. And again, once you see that the Lions get back to that bread and butter, it is a formula that you can rely on. That's why I think that the Lions are my favorite out of the NFC. When you are this strong in the trenches, when you can run the ball like this basically on anybody, the only concern I have with the Lions is that secondary. And you see it a little bit in this one. It's a good contrast. And that's why I really was interested in this matchup coming into this week, not only because it's a rematch between the NFC wildcard game from last year that was decided by a point, not only because it's Goff versus Stafford, right? Two guys facing against their own old teams, two guys who were traded for each other facing off, two number one picks, ton of great storylines. But it's also the drastic contrast in how these offenses put in work. And I think that they clash pretty well. I think that you see the Rams' defensive line is going to need to come a far way if they want to be taken seriously. It's a lot of young guys up front. Byron Young, Fiske, the rookie from this year's draft class, versus his teammate at Florida State, right? You get to see them get tested against probably the best front in all of the NFL. And on the inverse, you get to see this Lions secondary, and if they have improved, against one of the top-notch aerial attacks in the NFL. And I think there's room for improvement on both sides, a little bit more on the Rams defensive front, but I did like what I saw from the young guys. I am a little bit concerned about the Detroit secondary, just in terms of, again, how great they can be and how that impacts them in certain matchups. But they look better than last year, in my opinion. I'm a little more confident. I like how Arnold looked. Carlton Davis drops an interception, but I think he's a definitive upgrade. And, you get to see Rakestraw out there a little bit. I think Brian Branch is really, really solid. So I think they're going to be better than last year. And when that's your only weakness, and you show this to me against a really high-octane offense week one, I'm even more encouraged. Again, just the way they win this game. When your defense can hold up in the red zone multiple times like that. Again, 2 red zone stands where they hold them to 3 points. A red zone stand where you get a turnover on downs. And then along with that, you get a lot of pressure. I was really impressed. And you win again when your quarterback doesn't play his best game or throw his best punch. It's an impressive week one victory for the Lions.
And I do like this Detroit defense. I agree with you. Of course, the secondary is always going to be the question mark. That's the reason I didn't pick them to go to the Super Bowl. I am worried about that. And although we talk about the offensive formula being so replicable, like, there's probably going to be some game, some moment where they need Goff to be better than he was in this game in the clutch. And they do need him to make some more high-level throws. And we'll see if he can do it. But the defensive front, which was already their strength, right? They were a phenomenal run defense last year, really good pass rush. It's just even better now. Marcus Davenport was really impactful in this game. He hits the quarterback 3 times. Ali McNeil is another stud up front. Aiden Hutchinson, of course, is living in the backfield in this game. And I love the linebacking core. Anzalone was great again. And I do think that Brian Branch is going to be a better fit at safety. I thought that he was pretty impactful in this game. There is one other wrinkle to this Lions offense, though, that makes me maybe even more optimistic about them on that side of the ball than last year. And that is the emergence of Jameson Williams, who I've been high on, who I've been really excited to see out there healthy with another offseason of development. That's been kind of like the biggest concern for a lot of people offensively with the Lions, at least the lack of depth in the receiving core, the lack of high impact guys outside of Amon-Ra, even though we know that Laporta's one of the best receiving tight ends in football. And I've been confident that Jameson Williams is the sort of explosive threat who can take the top off of defenses in a way that Amon-Ra and Laporta, working the middle of the field as possession consistent guys, just don't. And I thought that you saw that. I mean, he absolutely burnt my beloved Trey White, which was tough. I felt for my boy coming off the Achilles. I'm happy to see him out there starting, but that's a young man's game covering Jameson Williams, and he was not up for it on that play. They get him going on a reverse, like, he just adds a dimension to this offense with that sort of explosive speed that just makes life even easier on Jared Goff. So, like, this wasn't a great offensive second half from the Lions. They stalled a little bit, but also you think Goff didn't play very well. Didn't really get Laporta involved until late. Didn't really get Amon-Ra involved at all. It's just the run game, and it's the emergence of Jameson, and they still put up 26 points. And when it comes down to it, they march down the field. So I think this is an elite football team. The Rams, I was impressed, but I do still have more questions.
Yeah, just a few more things I want to add on top of that. The interception that Goff throws in the second half, too, that takes 3 more points off the board. You have 3 and outs in the second half for the Lions. Again, that's when they were leaning on Goff a little bit more. And Jameson Williams is that home run hitter. I mean, you see it even back in the NFC title game, in the early stages of that game. First quarter hits a home run. Every NFL team needs a guy like this. And that is the thing that unlocks this offense to its full completion, right? You have Amon-Ra and Laporta, your steady hands. When you can have that kind of home run hitter, it just opens up everything else. And I like, for the record, I like Khalif Raymond a bit too. I think he's a good slot guy. I think he's a good third depth receiver. I don't think I liked Josh Reynolds when he was here, and I thought he had a decent game in Denver for how bad Bo Nix was, but I fully trust Jameson Williams to step up and fill that role. And last thing I want to mention about the defensive front, Davenport had a great debut with this team. He looked phenomenal. This is a defensive line that's still down DJ Reader, who is one of the best run stuffers in all of the NFL. He's out of this game with a torn quad. I mean, when he gets back, this is probably the best defensive line in football, one of, if not the, that's going to take another step up even more. So, yeah, I'm still hoarding all the Lions stock, man.
You're all in.
I'm still rocking with them.
I mean, you're saying the Rams are on the same level as them. And for people who don't know, you have the Lions winning the Super Bowl. So that's the top level. You can't get any better than that. I do think that there's a gap. And I mean, you mentioned the defensive front. I think Stafford throws that pick in the end zone. I think the pressure was a large part of that. Also, he misdiagnosed the coverage, but they're just accelerating that timeline. And I did think the Lions were able to do that. And Stafford dealt with it because Stafford's just him, bro. Stafford's been underrated. It feels like there's sort of a collective awakening. Like, wow, this dude can make throws that very, very few people can. And even though he's not the most athletic, he's still a great improviser, and he can create out a structure at a really high level, and he can carry an offense. And he did all that. He just missed a couple throws, misses that third down throw to Kupp that could have basically ended the game, and then almost threw the pick to Carlton Davis, as you mentioned. So he wasn't perfect, and he probably had to be if the Rams were going to win this game. So it's a good showing from the Lions. Not perfect, but they end up getting it done when it matters most. Let's move on, Logan, to Bills-Cardinals. Why don't we talk about that game? Of course, we're always going to talk about Josh Allen and his greatness here, and he delivered today. What did you take away from that one?
Well, I really thought the Bills let this game be way closer than it should have been. To start off this game on the first drive for the Cardinals, 3rd and 13, there's a horrible unnecessary roughness penalty on Dorian Williams. Kyler Murray, gets out and scrambles, is going to duck, and like Dorian still goes for it, but you can clearly see that he lifts up right at the end of his tackle. None of his weight hits Kyler. I'm pretty sure Kyler gets under him unscathed. Like, that should have been a field goal at worst. They give the Cardinals a free TD. The refs do, I mean, they should have gotten off the field there. And then DJ Dallas has an 88-yard return TD for Arizona. So outside of that, I mean, the defense actually would have given up 18 points at most. Josh also has a sack and his fumbles in the red zone. Kyler also gives that back too. He has a sack fumble that turns into points for Buffalo, but I always felt that everything was going to be okay because they had Josh Allen. He goes for 232 yards today, 4 total TDs, 2 passing and 2 rushing, 2 power rushing TDs versus Arizona too. I mean, you just can't bottle up Josh in the red zone. It's what he does, man. Shakir and Coleman, I thought, looked good. I think they need to get Dalton Kincaid going a little more. They ran the ball effectively enough in this game. And I didn't think the defense played great, but they held up. Like I said, I think they were played better than the stats suggest. You got 28 points on the board, but you've got a phantom TD that should have been a field goal or return TD. The defense holds the Cardinals to field goals on 2 of 4 of their red zone trips. They hold Kyler Murray under 170 yards passing, and they get back there 4 times. I don't think the Cardinals are a good football team. I think the Bills' defense is a little underrated at this point, but I was impressed with how they bottled up Kyler Murray for the most part, and Josh Allen did his thing. If you can just clean up on these weird freak fluke plays that always seem to happen to the Bills, man, there's never a normal Bills game. But I thought they played pretty well. And again, man, they got Josh Allen. At the end of the day, man, I just believe in Josh, right? People always were asking. I had so many people, Carson, after our previews. Well, why do you think the Bills are going to be good this year? Oh, why do you think the Bills have a chance at beating the Chiefs in the playoffs? Because that is a prediction of mine. To me, there is no quarterback in the NFL more well-equipped to go head-to-head, to go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes than Josh Allen. And so when you ask me a question like that, why are you picking the Bills? It's not a Bills thing. Like, I think the Bills are a good football team. It's because that's how much I believe in Josh Allen.
Yeah, it's not a conversation when you talk about who's number 2. And I think that we seem to be trending towards that recognition. I don't know. Maybe I'm being overly optimistic, but I talked about how the fact that it was ridiculous that we ever had this whole Burrow Allen conversation, that was frankly a fake ad debate. I tweeted that out, and it seemed that most people agreed with me on that matter. So we'll see. I'm sure things will ebb and flow. Josh will have a game with 2 turnovers, and then everybody will decide that he's awful again. Literally the strip sack, like the first thing the announcers say is, oh, that's the Josh Allen experience. How do you like 4 touchdowns, 270 yards, in an incredibly efficient performance? He had 4 touchdowns, 5 incompletions in this game. Logan, it was really surgical, and he did that in spite of some sloppiness around him offensively. You mentioned James Cook was mostly good in this game, but really what I'm talking about is the offensive line, and particularly penalties, dude. The Bills had 9 penalties in this game. I would guess that 6 or 7 of them were on the O-line, and there's a bunch that came at pretty pivotal moments, like down 17-3, trying to lead a crucial drive at the end of that first half. They had 3 false starts in like a minute-and-a-half stretch, and Josh still led them down the field for a touchdown. To start the second half, again, trying to get on even footing in the game. They hold immediately, set up 1st and 20. Josh still leads a touchdown drive. They have a false start to set up 3rd and 14 in the 4th quarter, another pivotal drive. Josh gets it to 4th and short, then he converts with his legs. He leads another touchdown drive. So they kept on having these sort of potential drive killers, and Josh was able to overcome that. I thought particularly extending plays, rolling out, that's where he was at his best in this game. Not necessarily any like one jaw-dropping moment, just, again, extending plays, buying himself time, and improvising. But I thought that he did that really, really effectively. And they were never in a hurry. It never felt like this was panic mode for the Bills. Josh never got careless with the football, and I thought that that was really positive. You mentioned the weirdness of this game. I do want to be clear, because it was a bogus roughing the passer call that went against Dorian Williams. Kyler is a rusher at that time, or I guess they called it unnecessary roughness. He's sliding. Dorian pulls up, literally makes minimal contact, is very clearly actively trying to avoid making contact. And that was on 3rd down. They were going to get off the field. Instead, they get a touchdown. What I will say, and what's important to mention, is that the Bills got a call later in the game that went in their own favor that was also pretty egregious. They called roughing the passer against the Cardinals. It looked like maybe it was a face mask in the moment, which is not what they called, but it really wasn't. I mean, there was a little contact to the head, but I don't know. I thought that that was a clean sack, and that allowed the Bills to maintain a drive. So I thought that things evened out on that front. But when we talk about the rest of this offense, I liked what we saw from the receiving core as well. And I have been very, very vocal about the fact that I basically thought that this Bills offense would not skip a beat and that they would not miss Stephon Diggs. He regressed last season. He was the third most productive receiver over the last 12 weeks of the year. Some addition by subtraction, just with being rid of Ken Dorsey for a full season, knowing what they have in the running game with James Cook. Like, there's just a lot of pieces in place that I really like. And there are receivers who I like here. Khalil Shakir, I've been saying, one of the most underrated players in football. He has a touchdown in this game. His balance is just incredible. He's got a knack for getting open. And Keon Coleman played a really good game. The rookie who they picked 33rd overall, he was getting open, made a beautiful catch on the sideline. And we talked about this after Thursday night. The instant that Xavier Worthy did anything good for the Chiefs, everybody rushed to say, oh my God, how could the Bills do business with the Chiefs and let them get their guy? I think Keon's more of a true number one. I think he has that build. I think he has that upside. And the Bills got their guy. They got the guy they wanted. And I was happy with his performance in the debut. But also the depth pieces, it's a well-rounded group, I think. Not an elite group, not a flashy group. But Matt Collins looked good. He caught a touchdown off of a smart audible from Josh. MVS, he's a frustrating football player, but he is at least a deep threat that you can introduce to this offense. Curtis Samuel is sort of like the gadget guy. He catches a screen in this game. And of course, Dalton Kincaid is like the best route runner, arguably the best pass catcher in this room. And he didn't even really do much in this game. So Josh was really spreading the wealth. And I think that that is reflective of the fact that this room is deep and the fact that this room has been underrated, but maybe more importantly, that he's Josh Allen and he's going to turn out a top 5 offense no matter what, because he's just the sort of special dual threat who is capable of doing that, a talent that we've very rarely seen in the history of this sport. And if he can buy you 4 to 5 seconds rolling out to get open, and then he can throw back across his body, like, yeah, any receivers are going to be able to produce in that environment. That's what he does. He's an elevator. So I thought that the offense produced. I mean, they put up 34 points in this game. I think they're going to be one of the lead offenses in football. The defense was more of a mixed bag. And I thought that Kyler was really surgical in the first half. He was escaping the pocket when he had space to do so. But when the Bills were really trying to contain him, he was just dotting up from inside the pocket, and the pass rush wasn't getting home. I didn't love the play calling from the new defensive coordinator, Bobby Babich. I thought there were a couple breakdowns. There was a third down where he dropped Greg Rousseau into coverage, your best pass rusher. He was dominant in this game as a pass rusher. Have him do what he does best. They were struggling to tackle Connor early. Like, first half, Cardinals had 3 possessions. They got 3 scores. So the Bills defense was struggling, and you're missing some key pieces there. Matt Milano, Taron Johnson gets hurt in this game. But of course, they also let both of their veteran safeties go this offseason, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. Second half, though, I thought that they really snapped into gear. Rousseau just took over, ends the first series with a sack on third down, has a strip sack on the next series. He's a star. I think that he probably remains underrated on a national scale. And Logan, of all people, Von Miller makes a play to give the Bills an opportunity to go up 6 in the final couple minutes of this game. Just a straight bull rush, just drives the left tackle into Kyler for a sack. I'm not suddenly going to become a Von Miller optimist, but last year, he was just about the worst football player that I'd ever seen. I mean, he quite literally made 0 impactful plays in an entire season of football. I think he had 2 or 3 tackles in a season of football while being paid like a star, of course. So he already topped that in game 1 of this season, and the run defense was much better in the second half. So we've been harping on this. We don't need to beat a dead horse, but all the losses that people were concerned about with the Bills were, in my opinion, largely overstated. They're going to be an elite offense. McDermott's a good defensive coach. They still have good personnel in place if they can stay healthy and survive Milano's absence in the regular season. And they'll be a really, really good team, and they should be the favorite to win this division still.
Yeah, I agree. I thought Bernard played a good game too in the middle, holding it down. You watched this one a little closer than I did. How come the Cardinals couldn't get Marvin Harrison Jr. going in this one? He has 1 catch for 4 yards on 3 targets. What did you attribute that to?
I thought he was well covered. I thought the Bills made him a point of emphasis. He also got a target early in this one, and Kyler threw him a nice ball, and he just dropped it. And that was another thing. Kyler played really well, man. The stat sheet is good, but he also threw a couple nice balls that were dropped, including on that final drive. Michael Wilson drops a ball. He basically put that last ball exactly where it needed to be. And it was just a good play by the DB for the Bills. So I'm not worried about Marvin. I just think he's going to demand a lot of defensive attention. And he's never got going in this one.
Yeah, I mean, some other guys had good games. I thought Trey McBride played a pretty good game too.
Yeah.
Kyler seemed to find him.
And Kyler loves Dortch as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's just an underratedly deep receiving room for the Cardinals too. And the Cardinals, I think, are very solid, dude. I consider this a good win for the Bills, especially rallying from being down early. That offense is legit. The defense is not so good, but I think Kyler and the Cardinals, they're going to give a lot of teams trouble in a good game this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't think they're going to be great, but they're going to be feisty. They're going to be competitive, and they're not going to go down. I like the Cardinals too, and it hinges on Kyler, man. Kyler's I said this in the offseason. I mean, when guys go out for a long time, it's weird, man. Normally they get a little overrated, right? I think the inverse happened with Kyler, man. I think that people have kind of forgotten about how good he is, and I honestly don't think the stat sheet does him justice, but the pressure did get home in the second half. I thought for the most part he dealt with it really well, especially extending play. He's one of the best weapons I've seen rushing. Like, he's so good at getting out of the pocket, so good at manipulating it. I think the Cardinals are going to be competitive, man. I don't look at them as a real playoff contender or anything like that. Again, they're playing in a pretty tough division, but I don't think the Cardinals are just going to be a pushover team in the ways that sometimes they were last year.
No, and I'm with you on Kyler. He really is a very unique, very special talent at the position. Everybody hates him because he plays COD and because he can't single-handedly save the Cardinals, and he was a number 1 overall pick, so expectations are high. But like, the combination of arm talent and speed, it's incredibly rare. And again, he was making really good decisions in this game. So you're right, actually, the stat sheet doesn't look crazy for him, but I thought he played a really good football game. And I thought that this was an encouraging week 1 for the Cardinals overall. All right. You know who did not have an encouraging week 1, Logan? The Jacksonville Jaguars, who were in full control against the Dolphins early, potential for a little bit of an upset. And they end up just melting down late, really. What was your biggest takeaway from this game?
I mean, they completely crumbled. The Jets let this one, the Jaguars, they let this one slip through their fingers. Basically a 14-point swing. They're marching in the second half. They have a lead. And Etienne fumbles the ball out of the end zone. Immediately after that, Tyreek Hill in this offense answered with a 80-yard TD to the house. And I want to give a big shout out to the Dolphins defense. They absolutely clamped the Jags up in the second half. The Jags scored 17 points in the first half. They score 0 in the second half. They go 2 of 10 overall on third down. They have 5 3-and-outs in the second half. And they amassed just 103 total yards in the second half. 94 of those came on one drive when Etienne has the turnover. They come up with back-to-back clutch sacks on Trevor Lawrence. Jason Sanders missed a 42-yarder earlier in the game. He makes the game winner, 52-yarder. He is now 8 of 8 on game-winning or tying field goals in the fourth quarter and overtime. And Trevor Lawrence has to be better, man. I was really disappointed with him. 12 of 22, 162 yards, 1 TD to 0 picks. I did pick the Jaguars to win this game, and I was pretty confident that they were going to wrap this thing up. It's just, it's inexcusable, man. Lawrence is responsible for just 37 yards in the second half. And, you know, the Dolphins did a much better job of getting pressure home. You got to carry the offense, man. You got to put something together. Like, Bigsby and Etienne did their thing on a drive. Lawrence really didn't do anything in the second half. And the big thing to me is that the Dolphins offense, in my eyes, can only be better. It's impressive that they won this game without the rushing attack. This was the number one rushing attack in 2023 that averaged 5.1 yards per attempt. In this game, they averaged just 3.2 rushing yards per attempt. And I got to give a lot of credit to Tua. He played a good game. I still don't think he's as good as everyone says he is. I don't think he's a top 10 QB in football.
Yeah, let's hear all the mandatory disclaimers.
I have to. He struggles when he's pressured. He struggles to make plays out of structure. But he has 338 yards, a TD, 8 yards per pass. The Dolphins offense goes 8 of 16 on third down. And I only think the offense is going to be more explosive. Tyreek Hill, 130 yards, 80-yard TD.
Yeah.
Waddle goes for 109 yards. A-Chain has 76 receiving yards. Like, credit to this Jags front and holding the running game in check, but the Dolphins have multiple ways they can kill you, man. Like, when you can't get immense pressure on Tua and get him off target, I thought the Jags did a better job of that in the first half. they can get going. And it's really impressive to me that the Dolphins did this without the running game. I mean, every game they dominated on the ground. This one they didn't, and they showed that they can win it in a different way. And this defense played much, much better in the second half, completely bottled up Jacksonville.
There's just something about the Jags that I really don't trust.
It's a funk, man. It's like a curse or something, dude.
Yeah, well, now they're riding at like an all-time low considering how last year ended, dropping 5 of the last 6. I think for me, the biggest thing is just that I do not like this coaching staff. I don't like Doug Peterson. I don't like Press Taylor as a play caller. And listen, there's a couple of really unfortunate moments that don't go their way. ETN fumbles on the goal line. Great punch by Javon Holland. Huge play. Basically kept the Dolphins in that game. But some of the decision-making from the coaching staff, going for it in their own territory, they give the ball to ETN, plays just completely blown up, like they aren't close to converting it. And I just think consistently the play calling here is not creative. It doesn't make the most of Trevor's talent, and Trevor had to be better. The Jags were just really bad situationally, especially later in this game. They go 2 of 10 on third down, and Christian Kirk drops a very catchable ball on 3rd and 5 when they're up a field goal and they're potentially driving downfield. Like, they just didn't execute in any of the big moments. Brian Thomas Jr. looked really good in the first half of this game and then basically just got phased out. So they're just a team that I fundamentally don't trust. They have pieces in place I like. I am a Lawrence defender. I don't think that he is one of the elite quarterbacks in football at this stage, but I think he's knocking on the door of top 10. I think that he is still an immensely talented quarterback who largely is not at fault for the Jags' issues, but he never closed the door in this game. And so he didn't have that catastrophic moment, but at the same time, he didn't do what is expected of him as a high-end quarterback in the home stretch of this game. I thought the Dolphins played fine. I thought that Hill and Waddle did their thing. They're phenomenal. It's the fastest offense that we've ever seen, and you felt that in this one. I mean, you get Hill and Waddle going on these deep crossers. It's unguardable. They're going to go for 50-plus yards once a game. HN is just explosive, not necessarily on the ground in this one, but got really involved in the receiving game, and Tua did his job. I thought he played a solid game. He got the ball to his playmakers, especially in that second half. I do want to give some credit to the Jags run defense. I thought that with Eric Armstead up front there now, there was some improvement. But as you say, Dolphins didn't run the ball well. They still did enough offensively, and I do think they were gifted some opportunities by the Jags. So I'm not really moved on my outlook for either of these teams by this game. I think the Jags are probably going to be just outside the playoffs, and I think the Dolphins are probably just going to sneak in.
I feel the same way. I don't have the Dolphins making the playoffs, but I think they're going to be knocking on the door. And I think the Jags are going to be better. Although, I don't know, man. I don't like Press Taylor either. At this point, I don't like Doug Peterson. I think you got to fire him if you don't make the playoffs this year. Like, there's enough talent here where, you know, they shouldn't be this bad, and Trevor Lawrence shouldn't look this bad. Like, in a lot of ways, too, I don't think they set him up for success with this play calling. What I will say, I like Brian Thomas Jr. a lot, and I think he's probably the best receiver that Trevor Lawrence has had up to this point, and I'm really excited about him long-term in this offense. I think they're going to be a really potent duo. That TD was nice. He had another nice sideline grab. He's really solid, and I think this offense could go up a notch if they get it done. And the Jags aren't that far off. If they score that TD, if Etienne gets in the end zone, which, again, I think that was way more had to do with the rushing attack, with Bigsby, with Etienne going on that drive. We're looking at this game in a little bit different way. That one play really swung the momentum in this game. Absolutely. I mean, and the Jags crumbled. And sadly, that's kind of a part of the Jags' identity and experience right now, is when you give them a little bit of resistance, when you push back a little bit, you know, they fold like a house of cards. That's got to change. And the way that changes is by winning games against good football teams. They don't get it done here, but they were really, really close. You got to play a complete game. And the Jags put up a goose egg in the second half, man. You can't just call it after one half, dude. You got to put the whole thing together. And they just didn't tonight. But yeah, I think they're going to be better. But there's definitely a stink, man, a black cloud, a something over Jacksonville.
For sure. Let's talk about the other AFC South matchup, Logan. Colts-Texans. This was a fun one. Texans end up holding on. It's a close game. What did you take away from this one?
It was a very fun game. And I just was really surprised at Joe Mixon's debut. I was convinced Mixon was washed. He goes for 159 rushing yards, a TD. The Texans, in turn, dominate the time of possession game, 40 minutes to 20 minutes in this game. The Colts defense was just on the field a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And CJ Stroud played well enough. This was an underwhelming week one for me. Statistically, you may look at it and you go, oh, CJ played a good game. 24 of 32, 234 yards, 2 TDs. He has a really bad interception in this game in the red zone. He's rolling out of the pocket trying to make a play. Ultimately, a holding penalty on the defense brings that back. There's also another play where he's under duress trying to throw a ball out of bounds. That one gets almost caught. He gets lucky on that one. So I didn't think Stroud played his cleanest or best game. It wasn't a horrible game, but there were a few rookie moments that we didn't see in Stroud's rookie year. And honestly, if you go back and look at the tape there, he only has 5 picks his rookie year. There's a lot of passes on tape too that he gets away with. But it was a good game. I thought the Texans did a good job with their pass rush getting home. I thought they did a phenomenal job on Jonathan Taylor and that push up front. And I think Anthony Richardson is going to have a bit of a roller coaster season this year, Carson. 9 of 19, 47.3 completion percentage, 212 passing yards, 2 TDs and a pick. He also has 56 rushing yards and 1 TD. What I will give him props for, that was an insane throw to Alec Pierce. I have not seen many highlights like that, man. The fact that he snaps the ball, he slips, and in the moment of like a second, recollects himself, fires a pinpoint accurate ball past 2 Texans defenders. I mean, it's in stride. It's on time. Pierce doesn't have to slow down or anything. Catches it, waltz into the end zone. It's a freaking bomb. Like
Logan, tell me if I'm overreacting. I think that might be the best throw I've ever seen.
It's up there. It's definitely up there.
67 yards, a split second after slipping, damn near off his back foot still.
And takes
perfect.
And he took a lick. He took a lick right afterwards.
Legitimately one of the most incredible things I've ever seen on a football field.
The reason I say it's going to be a roller coaster, and this is why I picked against the Colts, it's also a combination of why I picked against the Titans having great seasons. I think you're just going to have a battle of both right now. He's a young quarterback, inexperienced. He also has an awesome play, 4th down. The Colts are down 9 points. They need it in the red zone. Just a grown man, clutch, big body rushing TD. Almost gets held up at the 1, but he's not going to be denied. Uses all of his weight to push into the end zone. But he does throw a really bad interception, overthrow in the middle of the field. There's another ball to Alec Pierce that he just misses again. It's about the consistency. You know, again, he's below 50% completion percentage. I think Richardson is going to put together one hell of a highlight tape if he can stay healthy this year. I'm talking pinpoint accurate bombs like we saw to Pierce. Huge plays like that. I think we're going to see him make some monstrous plays with his legs. I think he's going to be really efficient in the red zone as a rushing threat. He's just got those physical tools. But again, I think there's going to be some technical issues, him reading the field, going through progressions, decision-making, and a little bit of that inaccuracy that's going to lead to some turnovers. I'm high on Richardson long-term. I think it's just going to take him a little bit of time to get more experienced. But I think it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster. You're going to have some really high highs with Richardson, but I also think there's going to be some lows, some learning moments in what is basically his rookie year. I mean, he plays in 4 games last year.
I'm higher on AR than you are. And
I mean, this season or long-term? I know that
both.
I mean,
I do think this year is going to be a roller coaster. I don't disagree with that. However, when you compare him to Levis, I would put them in a different category.
No. I'm definitely high. I don't mean to lump them in the same. I think Levis is going to have more.
Because Levis just has way more of a tendency to make like those absolutely boneheaded plays. We saw perhaps the GOAT of them all today, and he's just not as talented. Anthony Richardson is legitimately one of the most physically gifted quarterbacks we have ever seen. He's 6'5", he's built like a tank, he runs a 4.4 40, and he has one of the handful of strongest arms in football. Like, he is physically Cam Newton reincarnated. He is Josh Allen. Like, that is the sort of freak, but faster than both of them. And I think that this guy's probably going to be a superstar in this league. I think that he is on that trajectory. I just cannot think of a guy this physically talented who didn't reach those heights. Like, Somebody's probably going to say Jamarcus Russell because he could throw the football 75 yards on his knees. But like, no, first of all, the mobility alone is such a meaningful difference. And also, Anthony Richardson is in a situation where he's with a good OC. He's with a good offensive mind in Shane Steichen. I think that's important. And when I think about Josh, how Josh looked in year 2, how Josh looked as a rookie, I thought that Richardson, yes, he had his moments of inaccuracy last year. Yes, he had his moments of questionable decision-making, but I thought in the 4 games we saw, he was more polished than a rookie Josh Allen. I thought this game, yeah, again, we only see him throw the ball 19 times, but he was pretty good overall. And there are just like so many special moments out there where it goes beyond just like a highlight reel. Like he is just shredding the Texans with the read option on the ground. He doesn't just make one of the craziest throws I've ever seen that we talked about. He throws another ball 60 yards that Alec Pierce makes a great play on. But like, again, an accurate ball 60 yards downfield, 4th and goal. He just carries a defender into the end zone on a run. And he still has so much potential to continue to tap into. Like he is such a young man.
He's the youngest starting quarterback in the NFL.
Youngest starting quarterback in the NFL, barely 22. Keep in mind, that's after his rookie season. He's still the youngest starter. Famously, only started 1 season in college, got hurt last year. He's only started 18 games since high school, and he already looks pretty damn good when you consider that standard, when you consider that trajectory for development for these guys who are crazy talented but are raw. I think he's ahead of schedule, and I think there's going to be 1 year where it just all comes together. I don't think it's this year. I think this year might look something like 2019 Josh Allen, where there are moments where you're frustrated and doesn't take good enough care of the football. But I think the year that he like takes that leap and all of a sudden is one of the difference makers in football, I think it's coming. I don't know if it's next year. I don't know if it's the year after that, but I think it's more likely or not that we see him reach those heights.
Well, another couple bonus points for Anthony Richardson. I mean, he keeps them in this game when Jonathan Taylor really can't get going. 16 carries, 48 yards, 3 yards per carry. He gets a TD. But, I mean, this is Richardson, pulling this offense to being in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you talk about the Jamarcus Russell comp that people might go to when they're trying to downplay his physical tools or why Richardson might fail in this league. The difference between them two to me is Richardson cares.
Yeah.
I mean, Richardson just cares on a different level in a way that
100%.
He wants to get better. He wants to be great. Like I see it every week that he's played. Like he just has that kind of iron will that I believe in. And you talk about his, his union with Shane Steichen. Steichen, in my opinion, makes the most out of these guys and comes up with great game plans. Look what he did his year with Jalen Hurts. Again, Anthony Richardson is not Jalen Hurts right now. It's honestly, I don't mean to downplay Jalen Hurts. It's probably not that far of a gap. Like I could see Richardson closing it pretty soon, but that's what I'm saying. Steichen is a guy that's going to get the most out of him. I thought the offensive line had a pretty poor game out the gates. I think they're going to play better, and they don't get Jonathan Taylor going whatsoever. And again, Carson, like you said, when you can connect on these big kind of shot plays, there are just some quarterbacks that can't do that. There are some quarterbacks that are incapable of making the big throws that he can. There are quarterbacks that are incapable of having this kind of impact on the ground. So it's like, okay, you're giving me just a diamond in the rough. If this guy can clean up the easiest part of the game, which is processing, which is being accurate on short and medium routes, which is going through his progressions. Again, playing quarterback's probably the hardest job in football. Maybe you go corner. It's a damn hard job. But Anthony Richardson does the hardest things at the position pretty easily right now. And if he can just clean up on the simplicity, I do think he's going to be a damn good QB. And I think there is a gap between him and Levis. I think Levis played a better game than the turnovers and the numbers will suggest. But, I'm not confident in him being like a consistent starter. I could see him having a bad year this year and getting benched. I don't see that with Richardson. I think Richardson is a multi-year starter here and has a lot more room to grow. I think he's going to be pretty good. I don't know if it's top 10 good. I don't know if it's top 5 good. I don't know where it is, but it's upper half of the league, and I think he's going to reach it next year or two.
Yeah. Again, I think about the crazy talented but raw dudes, Lamar, Josh. He's further along, and I really do think that if you put dudes with that sort of talent in the modern NFL with a good offensive mind, like you can really tap into a ton of that potential. It's not to downplay the importance of reading the field, taking the easy stuff, being accurate. But like, we have seen dudes get to the point where they're good at that stuff, and then they're also just absurdly physically talented. And that's what makes for an elite quarterback. And it's a skill set that you just can't replicate.
It's
And
the
he's
most
got it.
it's the most valuable one in the NFL today. And
Absolutely.
like you're talking about with average quarterbacks, there are quarterbacks that can go through the progressions and make all the right reads, but they're limited in the elite stuff, the stuff that makes quarterbacks elite, the scrambling, the out-of-pocket playmaking, the limitations of having a big, strong arm. AR's got all of that.
Like Joe Burrow would be an example of one of the dudes who's got all the intellectual stuff, but he just doesn't have that top tier athleticism creation. I think Joe's great. I think he's a top 5 quarterback, but rough showing for his Bengals today. Rough showing for him today. They lose to the Pats, who a lot of us have anticipated would be one of the worst teams in football, and they don't just lose. It never really feels like they're in the game. I mean, just anemic end to end. How worried are you about Cincinnati, Logan?
I mean, I don't know if I said it on last show, but I said it on the Theo show. I did take the Patriots to win this game in my predictions.
Good on you.
I just had a weird feeling, and I mean, I'm not worried because I didn't expect the Bengals to be that good this year, but Burrow looked really limited in this one. I thought New England did a phenomenal job of taking away passes over the top, but they looked really limited. And that's what I said in the preseason with this team is they're so reliant on their top 2 players, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. It's like if you can X out Jamar, if you can make him, into an average receiver, which he had 6 catches for 62 yards, if you can take him out of the game, there's not really much else that they can do. Joe is not a particularly mobile quarterback that can punish you on the ground. They couldn't get the running game going in this one. T. Higgins is out. The offense just looked really, really limited down Higgins. And the Bengals lose 2 fumbles. That's not on Burrow. Tanner Hudson has a fumble. Charlie Jones has a fumble. But they're bad on third down. They go 4 of 11 there. They only produce 224 yards of total offense. And the defense got shredded on the ground. The big problem with the Bengals last year is they couldn't stop anybody through the air. Is this going to be the problem that haunts them this year? Like Jacoby throws for 121 yards in this game.
Yeah.
You never want, that's Kenny Pickett numbers. You don't want to lose to a guy like that. I mean, come on.
You don't want to be in Kenny Pickett conversations.
And Ramondre Stevenson carves him up for 120 yards and a rushing TD. It's just like, again.
Jacoby was moving, though. Jacoby made some plays with his legs.
True.
Didn't know he had it in him.
I'm mad at myself because me and Angelo cooked up a QB rushing yards parlay. We thought about putting Jacoby in there, but then we waved it off. But the Bengals look really one-dimensional offensively. And that one dimension is Joe to Jamar. It seems like Joe Mixon might have actually been really helpful in this attack. I don't think the offensive line is that good. Again, you can win a lot of games with Burrow and Chase and them going off and them doing their thing. But other than the Patriots did a really good job Xing those guys out, of taking away big shot plays over the top, which this Bengals team is dependent on. And I think this defense is going to be solid, man. I am worried about the Bengals, and I wonder if I overshot the win totals for them and the Browns this year, man.
Well, neither of us have been high on the Bengals. You had them last in the division. I had them winning 9 games, but a big part of that was just the cupcake schedule that they have outside the division. They play the Titans, they played the Giants, they play the Panthers. Now, there's a couple other gimmies in there, or at least what should be gimmies on paper. One of them, though, I thought was the Pats. And listen, the Pats, because of their defense, it seems that Mayo is maintaining a Belichickian culture. Like, I mean, they still brought it with the game plan. They played their asses off defensively. That makes them like an uncomfortable team to play, but also they're absolutely going to be a bottom 3 offense in football. So like, I'm not really moved on the Pats here. I think that, yeah, they can give you some trouble with their defense, but they put up 16 points in this game still. And against most teams, that's just not going to cut it.
When you have an all-pro first-team wideout and an all-pro first-team quarterback, apparently,
yeah,
you got to score more than 16. It's completely on the offense.
Absolutely. And there's a few reasons that I have not been high on the Bengals. One of them being that they just weren't very good last year, that defense took a huge step back, and they bring in Geno Stone this offseason. Their safeties were just really rough last year. There was a big drop off there. So, okay, that's one improvement. But overall, I didn't see enough in this group to think they're going to suddenly leap to being an above average defense. And then I look at the offense and it's Joe Burrow and it's Jamar. And that's it. They don't run the ball well. They haven't run the ball well for years. Their line is mediocre. Their line's been mediocre. But crucially, they're losing receiver depth. Like, you can dismiss the Tyler Boyd loss. He's been a very consistent number 3. And when T. Higgins does go down, like he's out for this game, then you feel that lack of depth. And I just think in a situation like this, Joe Burrow is not an elevator in the way that a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, or a Lamar Jackson is, where those guys, it doesn't matter nearly as much who is blocking for them, who is catching passes. They have such an incredible ability to create, to overcome the situation. Like I was saying, if you can run around for 4 or 5 seconds, buy yourself time, and then make a ridiculous throw across your body, it doesn't really matter who's blocking. It doesn't really matter who's passing catches. That is going to produce good offense. Joe Burrow just can't do that. So yes, when you put him in a better situation with one of the most talented receiving corps like he's had for a good portion of his career, he can execute. He will produce as an elite quarterback, but he still hasn't produced the regular season offenses that Josh and Pat and Lamar have. I do think that he got overrated off the Super Bowl run when that defense balled out and Evan McPherson went insane. And I do believe that the Bengals have been overrated as a whole since then. And people have ignored a lot of the issues on this team. They've ignored the defensive regression. They've ignored the fact that with Burrow, this team was 5-5 last year. And I see people saying stuff like, oh, Bengals start slow, just wait until the winter. I'm just not sure I buy that. Like 2022, they started slow. Then they were awesome. Last year, they were just 5-5 when Burrow played. They only averaged 20 points per game. He averaged 6.3 yards per attempt, which is awful. And he was banged up early, and that was especially brutal. And then they got a little better. But like, they were never playing like an elite football team, in my opinion. So I'm not just giving them the benefit of the doubt when I see a bunch of problems with this team. They let the Pats run for 170 yards on them. And this is a team that has no passing attack whatsoever. I just do not think that they belong in conversations with, forget the elite playoff teams in the AFC. I don't think they're a playoff team.
I agree with you. And I mean, you mentioned the Tyler Boyd loss. I think the bigger loss is the guy that's been with Joe Burrow this entire time, Brian Callahan, new coach of the Titans. I mean, a lot of people wanted to point to the fact last year that this team ended up winning games with Jake Browning. Why? You have a lot of receiving depth, and I'm not putting Jake Browning or Joe Burrow on like the same level or anything close to that. But Browning filled in, was on time, was efficient, was accurate, got the ball to Jamar Chase when they needed to, got the ball to Tyler Boyd, spread the ball around. And now you're down Brian Callahan, who was a huge part of, this offense's success. So I just see regression across the board, man. And I got a feeling since he is going to bounce back, they'll probably win. They'll win soon, and you'll have your detractors, Carson, that'll always say, all the Bengals start slow, they're going to kick into gear. I don't think this is the year, man. I think we're looking at a potential bottoming out of this team.
Who do you think Burrow is closer to? Is he closer to Josh Allen or is he closer to Dak Prescott?
That's a great question.
Thank you. I try.
You said closer to Lamar or closer to Dak?
I said Josh. You could say Lamar if you want. But I think Josh is probably a tougher question because I think that gap is pretty freaking big.
Probably Dak. I mean, when you just look at the skill sets.
Pretty similar skill
sets.
Very,
very similar. I like Burrow more at the line of scrimmage. I trust Burrow a little bit more as a decision maker. I like Burrow's arm a little bit more, but I think it probably is closer. And if you're looking at guys that are in this tier, after tonight, I think you can have a real conversation about should Stafford be over Burrow right now. It's not just this game, right? And I don't want to act like it's last season too. We have to take it all into account. And yeah, I think he probably is closer to Dak.
I agree. I think that he is pretty clearly closer to Dak. And I think Dak is really good. I'm high on Dak. I think he gets too disrespected. But what are they? They're excellent pocket passers. They are high IQ operators within the pocket, and they can move a little bit and they can extend plays just a little bit. But like for the most part, it's going to be processing the game and accuracy from within the pocket. Neither of them are great arm talents. They're both pretty average arm talents. And there are just dudes who can do more to elevate offenses single-handedly. So at the end of the day, Joe Burrow is not the reason that I'm like this low on the Bengals. I think he is absolutely one of the bright spots, one of the greatest strengths, one of the best players on this team. But what I will say is I have a different level of confidence in a Josh or a Lamar to cover up all the blemishes around them and still win 11 games because there's a difference in their transformative impact, dual threats, extending plays, everything that we've talked about. For the Pats, like I said, this doesn't really move me. This is a pretty quintessential 2020s Patriots win, excel defensively, run the ball, win the turnover battle, make timely plays defensively. You can win a few games that way. Their offense is still going to make it hard. But what I will say is encouraging is that they have maintained that with Mayo, because that wasn't a guarantee. You lost the best defensive mind in football history and one of the best culture setters. And even if he fell off as a GM, and even if he wasn't able to put forth a decent offense in the last several years, like that always made the Pats a pretty competitive football team. And I think they'll be able to maintain that. They just have a really tough schedule as part of the reason I think they're going to win so few games this year. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And then on the other side, we are going to keep on mowing through these games after some words from DraftKings. NFL Week 1 is here, and a new season means new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Fans have spoken. We want to bet on touchdowns. DraftKings heard us and is delivering.
DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking a player to score a touchdown.
Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $250 in bonus bets instantly, plus 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 and 1 month of NFL Plus Premium on us. Offer ends September 19th. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. So, Logan, the Bengals result is significant because there's a lot of people who expect them to be a very good team, and they lost to a team that a lot of people expect to be very bad. One of the other major storylines, though, was not necessarily so much about the team as it was a player who a lot of us were very excited to see debut, that being Caleb Williams. And the Bears got a win. However, maybe not in the way that we would have expected, and definitely not on the back of Caleb. So before we get into this game as a whole, what did you make of his performance in his debut?
I thought that Chicago buttoned up the playbook a little bit for him. Caleb does become the first #1 overall quarterback to win their debut game since David Carr in 2002. As
that
you
went
mentioned,
pretty well.
Had very little to do with Caleb and the Bears offense. He goes 14 of 29 with 93 passing yards. There's some bad moments. Caleb misses a deep pass to a wide open Keenan Allen. That's basically a for sure touchdown. There's a lot of deflections and batted balls at the line of scrimmage. Chicago goes just 2 of 13 on third downs. They muster 148 total yards of offense and 2.8 yards per play.
Delicious.
But I think Caleb's going to be a lot better. There's so much zip on his ball. And I don't just say that to I don't say that about every quarterback. There's pop when Caleb throws the ball. He had a dot to DJ Moore on a rollout. I just think it's going to get time for him. And I'm not making excuses here because I feel like Caleb haters, Caleb
they're excited right now.
They are. They're very excited. And of course, he painted his nails before the game. So they're
staring at their barstool flag, and they are just cranking off to it.
Yeah, man. They got a little extra ammo. He can't play the same way he did in college, though. And I think you see a little bit of that, man. It's a transition to the NFL. You can't just go Fran Tarkenton mode and scramble around in the backfield and, find your guy.
Another culturally relevant reference from Logan.
Again, though, I think the Bears limited their playbook a lot. It wasn't a ton of going through his progressions. It's a lot of screen passes, a lot of short passes out into the flats. I just think it's a matter of him getting comfortable. I'm so confident in Caleb being a franchise quarterback. This is not the game to say that after, because he doesn't play a great game. He plays a pretty poor game, but
stand on it.
He didn't have a huge screw up. There wasn't a big, super bad pick. There's not a super bad fumble here. Again, I think it's just going to take time for him to get acclimated. And I think maybe this will be a rougher year. But also, I wonder at some point in this year if there's going to be a breakthrough game or just where he figures it out, right? I look at him very similarly to Caitlin Clark. And I don't think he's going to take the sport by storm as much as Caitlin has. I think Caitlin took to it like a duck to water. She is that much more talented and that much more brilliant than everybody else in the WNBA. I don't feel that way about Caleb and his. Wilson. She's nice. I don't feel, it's like that with Caleb, but it's like Jordan Love in his first year. The first 8 weeks of Jordan Love, we were relatively underwhelmed. I think it may take a minute for Caleb, but once he hits his stride, I think he's going to hit the ground running. And this may be one of the best situations a rookie quarterback has ever stepped into. The talent that he has around him offensively, from Keenan Allen to DJ Moore to Rome Odunze, who I like Odunze a lot, to Cole Kmet. There's weapons here. I don't think this offensive line is, super bad or anything like that. And this was one hell of a defensive performance. Two defensive / special teams touchdowns. You have a blocked punt recovered for a touchdown. You have a pick six. They forced 3 total turnovers. They hold Tennessee to 3 of 14 on third downs. That's a major appeal for a rookie quarterback, man. You see the disaster that it is in Carolina, where you don't have anything going for you, a bad defense, bad weapons, a bad offensive line, no running game. It's a disaster trying to watch Bryce Young do that. There's a lot less pressure here on Caleb in Chicago. And again, I just think it's going to take time, man, because there's going to be a game where he breaks out. And I think that's going to be his coming of age moment, his I'm here, recognize me, put some respect on my name. And I think he's just going to build on that. It's just going to take a couple of weeks, man. I'm not expecting a massive breakthrough, but he didn't have anything disasterful, which is all I can ask for Caleb, man. He didn't F it up.
He did not, but he didn't really do anything good. So I'm not going to make excuses for Caleb because I have been extremely high on him. I've put my nuts on the table. I've said, I think this dude's going to be MVP caliber. I think he'll be a top 3 quarterback in football. He played a bad game. You mentioned he's got zip on his ball. Absolutely. A little too much zip in this one. I think there were a lot of balls that were thrown a little hot, a little low as well. Missed on some intermediate throws, missed on a deep ball. I had 4 balls deflected at the line, as you mentioned. And maybe most significantly, I just thought held on to the football too long. And that has been the biggest criticism of Caleb, that he is accustomed to sort of backyard football that can work in college when you're way more talented than everybody else, but it's not going to work in the NFL. I feel like that criticism has been overstated. I also feel like Caleb is the sort of crazy talent where backyard football, the willingness to improvise, to do that special stuff outside of structure, is part of what makes him so great, as it does for Mahomes, as it does for Josh Allen. And so I have not been nearly as concerned about that as a lot of other people, but this is a game where you do see that it's going to be an adjustment on that front. And he does need to get a little bit quicker as a processor and take the easy stuff and whatnot. He made some nice plays with his legs. I mean, particularly a 3rd and 10. It didn't have the killer turnover, as you mentioned. At the end of the day, that was enough for them to win this game, but it was not a good performance at all. And I do have high expectations for him, not just long-term, but this year. We talked about him contending for breaking the Bears' various passing records, which obviously suck, but him doing that as a rookie, I don't think that's out of the question whatsoever. I love the weapons. I love the talent. I love the ability to make plays with his legs and the arm talent. And I think he's smarter than his detractors give him credit for. It's tough. Week 1, it's tough. We see it. 3 rookie quarterbacks debut today. He was in the middle of the pack out of those 3. He was not disastrous like a Bo Nix, but he definitely was bad in this game. I do want to give props to the Bears defense, though, because they were just sensational, and I expected them to be pretty average on that end, but obviously they flipped a switch once they added Montez Sweat into the fold last year. I mean, the entire pass rush just transformed, and they made a lot of timely plays. Jalen Johnson was really good in this game. TJ Edwards was good. So props to them for really carrying on that side of the ball. On the flip side of this, we have the Titans, who are probably going to be one of the worst teams in football, which does put the defensive performance into context. And we were talking about Will Levis a little bit earlier. What did you make of his performance today?
It was shaky. 19 of 32, 127 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 turnovers, 2 interceptions, and a fumble lost. Ends this game basically a blindside fumble. He had 2 good drives in this game, made some plays on the ground with his legs, but it's mostly powered by the running game. Just looked jittery, man. And that's kind of Levis, how Levis has looked, like not settled in. He's got a live arm, but it's not the most accurate. And he's the biggest reason I was skeptical about the Titans this season. Like, I like the offensive line. I like the running game. And I think the defense is much improved with their additions, especially the secondary. I don't know, man. Levis looks far from an NFL, a star franchise quarterback. He's much closer to the bottom 5 starting in the NFL today. He's just got to get more comfortable, man. He looked uncomfortable the whole game, right? Didn't look like really poised, looked jittery. And the thing with Levis, man, is he's just a little too comfortable with putting the ball in harm's way. And that's my biggest red flag with him is like, I like a cowboy. I like a gunslinger.
Who doesn't?
The reality with those guys is you're going to live by them and you're going to die by them. The games that they're making all the throws, you're going to crush the other team. And the games that he's not, he is going to sink your boat really fast. I think Will Levis, considering his inexperience at the NFL level, considering how inaccurate he can be at times, I think he's got to reel in that Buck Wild side of himself a little bit, man. He's got to be just more conservative. I think that this team can win some defensive football games with how much this defense is going to be better, with how good the O-line is, with how good the running game is. And I don't think they're elite on any of these things, but they're average to above average. I think Will has to do a better job of just not shooting themselves in the foot and protecting the football better. I think they're going to be towards the bottom of the league, but I think they can win some defensive run-oriented battles. But he's got to reel in the gunslinger stuff, man. I think Levis is a little bit too much of a cowboy right now for me to buy into the Titans this year.
I agree. I've been concerned on him, and I think a bit lower on him than some people. After last year, it felt like he was a real offseason riser where a bunch of people were like, he's the breakout candidate.
He had the debut game of 4 TDs, and it's hard, not to buy into that.
It was awesome. But I do think with him more so than a Richardson, right? You see like those real red flag moments. I remember rewatching his game against the Dolphins last year, which was a good comeback for the Titans, and thinking he threw like 9 balls that should have been intercepted. This one, he literally does one of the dumbest things I've ever seen on the football field when he attempts to just flip that ball to the sideline as he's getting wrapped up, and it's like 5 yards short and just a complete lame duck, and it's just the easiest pick 6 in the world. Like, you cannot gift wrap touchdowns for the opposing team like that. And like you say, Logan, I like creators. I like betting on physical talents. I like dudes who are going to take some chances, but there's a delineation between taking chances and being stupid. And I'm just not sure that he does enough in the positive direction to where I'm like, yeah, that guy's going to be a franchise quarterback. 3 turnovers in this game. And in this one, it was more bad than good. Like, he used his legs well. He threw a nice touchdown, but he basically melted down and lost him this football game. And I think you're going to see that several more times this year. And I just don't think the Titans have enough around him for me to be like, yeah, they're going to be competitive, scrappy. Like, they're okay. They're okay in other categories, but Pollard looked good in this game. The defense should be slightly improved, but it was not good last year. I do think that they're going to be towards the bottom of the league, and Levis is probably like the most important storyline for them this year, just figuring out if he's the guy or not. Let's talk about your Steelers, Logan. We shouldn't put it off any longer. I see you there. You got the jersey, you got the hat. A win for the boys. Perhaps the most vintage win there has ever been. 6 field goals from the Boz, 10 points allowed, and of course, a Steelers victory to start the season. How'd you feel about this one? What'd you take away from it for your boys?
I tried to tell you. So many people were betting on the Falcons in this game. Chris Boswell was the MVP of this game. The Steelers' entire offense, 6 made field goals.
The MVP?
Yeah.
Over the Teej?
I mean, it's probably TJ because, Boz. But, dude, we don't put up.
2 MVPs. Call MVPs.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that, man.
Utter woke nonsense. Let's just give everybody a medal.
I don't know about all that, man. But, he bangs a 57-yarder, a 56-yarder, a 51-yarder, and then a 44, a 40, and a 25-yarder. Yeah. The guy on the broadcast, Red Zone, I remember Scott Hansen brought it up, and he was like, I can't remember when this happened. This is the second instance I can remember this happening. Both Steelers games, both with Boswell. This one, and then obviously when they defeated the Chiefs in the playoffs with 18 points, that's with the Killer Bees offense, not the Justin Fields offense. They beat them completely on all field goals. And I want Justin Fields to be QB1 on this team. He's 11-28 as a starter, but he's 1-0 as a Steelers quarterback. And yes, Justin Fields is flawed, but I like his upside and his playmaking. He is a real weapon with his legs. He has 57 yards rushing in this game. And I almost wish he trusted his legs more. Fields wants to make these throws on the run, and he does a couple in this game. I want to give a lot of credit to him. I thought he had a clean and efficient game passing, no turnovers, 17 of 23, 156 yards. The Steelers go 8 of 17 on third downs. I liked him out of the play action. I thought he did a good job in RPOs, out of boots, out of rollouts. That's how you weaponize a guy like this. You get the running game going with Najee and Warren. You get him mobile out of the pocket, and he can hit these, quick out routes to Freiermuth or to Pickens. But again, there are some times where I wish Fields would look to be more of a threat as a runner, where he wants to make these throws on the run. And it's like, Justin, dude, my brother, you have 10 yards wide open in front of you. You're one of the greatest rushing weapons this game has ever seen. Just go. And he's a little hesitant at times. And so I think I wanted to be more comfortable and believe in himself a little more and look to weaponize that more. But the biggest thing with him throwing the football is he showed he can get the ball to George Pickens. 6 catches for 85 yards. He has the big play towards the end of the first half where the Steelers get points. He has another play where he throws a beautiful post route inside of George. The corner's on the outside. He only throws it where George can go and get it. It's not the most accurate ball, but George Pickens is a freak wide receiver talent. He is a bona fide wide receiver 1. He's one of the most talented guys I've ever seen at the position, and he has insane coordination in hands.
Yeah.
Like, it is tier 1 alien level freak stuff I'm talking about. He's an athletic monster. He's a playmaker after the catch, and he's a great route runner. And there's actually a play in this game that gets called back. Fields dots up a great throw towards the outside of Pickens, that gets called back for an offensive pass interference call that's just bogus. I'm not going to say there's not contact, but Pickens barely taps the guy. The corner doesn't move at all. Like, it just happens every single play. They never call that, and they bring back a big play. So Fields was on time. He was efficient. For the most part, he was accurate, and he got the ball to playmakers. I can't ask him to do anything else. I guess I could. Let's get the ball in the end zone. But again, there's a lot of flags that get called back.
It's the Steelers. Let's be honest. That's not happening.
It is happening. I am. There's flags that...
You're going to get in the end zone?
Yes. There are 2 plays. The phantom
offensively?
OBI, it's happening, man. We don't have Josh Allen, but...
I'll believe it when I see it.
We're going to be better. Fields is flawed. He's going to hold on to the ball too long. He's going to take sacks. He's inaccurate at times. He's just going to miss throws. And he's going to be late on some throws and reads. I thought there were blitzes that Fields didn't pick up, and he was late to get rid of the ball, and it led to some pass breakups. And I'm going to be frank with you. Like, the offense is not going to be great. The Steelers have no avenues to the offense being great. They didn't get in the end zone. They had 18 points. They were all field goals. They have 4.1 yards per play. I think the offense is going to have to be run-heavy based, but Fields is a playmaker, and he can make some off-script stuff happen that Russell Wilson just simply cannot. And the biggest encouraging thing here is that the Steelers are well-equipped to be even better defensively this year. They hold Bijan to 30.7 yards per carry. They hold Atlanta to 2 of 9 on third downs, and they force 2 interceptions. A lot of that is because TJ is the biggest and best defensive playmaker in football. You have the fumble ball that is deflected off of a motion. TJ recovers that. There are 2 other strip sacks that are called back in this game. One is because TJ was offsides, but the other is called back because of a holding penalty on Dante Jackson. Like, you have to commit 2 guys to him. He's just going to feast on one-man coverage. The pressure was hellish. The front was awesome. Hayward, Ogunjobi, Benton, Adams, Highsmith all did their job. Fitzpatrick hopefully is going to play the entire year back from injury. The two secondary members that we brought in this year, Dante Jackson and Deshaun Elliott, both had interceptions in this game. Patrick Queen looked good in his debut. And I think Peyton Wilson is a bona fide, really good number 2 middle linebacker. The guy has wheels. He's got great instincts. He's a great tackler. The one thing that I was frustrated with in this game, and I'll let you take over before we go over to the Falcons, Carson, I thought it was a stupid-ass gamble by Mike Tomlin at the end of this football game. 4th and 1. The Steelers have a 5-point lead. Go up by 8, Tomlin. Like, it ultimately doesn't come back to bite them because they force an interception on Kirk the next drive out with that Steelers voodoo magic.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just a dumb play call. Tomlin, we haven't gotten in the end zone all game long. That's not Steelers football. We play Steelers football. Steelers football says take the points, play the safe game, go up by 8. That ticked me off. Everybody and their brother knew we were going to run a QB sneak. And you dial up a QB sneak. Field slips. We don't get it. That's the one area in the game where I was really frustrated with outside of not getting in the end zone. Tomlin, that's a dumb gamble, man. We play Steelers football. Don't get off script. And he did right there. And it could have cost us. I'll talk about Kirk in what my outlook is for him, but I'd love to hear what you thought about this classic Steelers victory.
And it was one of the greats. Logan, I would love for you to just live a little. I mean, come on. Who doesn't love going for it on 4th and short inside the opposing 10? I do disagree. I think the value of going up 2 scores there, the probability of converting a 4th and 1, still the Steelers, but it's well over 50%. I think it's a justified decision. I actually think it's the right decision. And I think the Steelers are like the single most conservative offense in football when it comes to this stuff. And any little injection of aggression to me is a good thing. I think it's unfortunate you've been traumatized that it didn't work the first time that they ever went for it on a 4th down. I still think it's the correct process. I would prefer to be aggressive in a spot like that. Try to effectively end the game instead of leaving it as a 1-score ball game. But I don't have a ton to add, dude. I mean, this is the same exact team. I get it. Now it's Justin Fields. It's not Trubisky or Pickett or Mason Rudolph back there. He's a different kind of quarterback. He's a slightly better quarterback, but he's far from a game changer. I thought what was nice about this game is he didn't mess it up. I mean, he was reasonably efficient. He didn't have any catastrophic mistakes. I'm always going to question his ability to read the field, go through his progressions, but again, there were no moments where it's like he's running around like a chicken with his head cut off for 9 seconds and something very, very bad happens. And he used his legs effectively. So yeah, this offense is going to be bad. Like, I don't want to cover that up. It's going to be a bad offense. Pickens was great. I thought particularly the adjustment on that deep ball was just a testament to his talent. He's getting open downfield. He's making contested catches. Like, more than half of the team's total passing output went to him. But the weapons outside of him, especially in the receiving game, very lackluster. In Fields, although I think he probably is a better option than Russ just because of his ability to move, you know, he's still going to be one of the bottom 8 or so starting quarterbacks. And this is going to be one of the bottom 8 offenses. Like, they get 6 field goals in this game, but that's off 3 takeaways. I mean, they're starting with pretty good field position in a lot of those spots, but hey, they make the timely plays. They're a great defense. I'm with you. I think this defense is even more talented than last year, should be healthier than last year's, and they're going to win 8 to 10 games. And we can all agree on that. They're not going to be a bad football team because they're too well coached. They're too good defensively. They're not going to be a threat to beat the top end teams because their offense is still just way too limited.
Yeah, and I do think we would have gotten in the end zone at some point in this game. I thought there were 2 really bad penalties that took the Steelers out of scoring position. The OPI that I mentioned on Pickens earlier, but the Broderick Jones penalty to me was inexcusable. Grady Jarrett, drives one of our offensive linemen, I believe it's James Daniels, into the ground way past the whistle. Broderick Jones walks up to him behind him just to say, like, hey, this is my team. This is my guy. You're not going to do that to me. He doesn't initiate anything. Grady initiates, hits Broderick. Broderick doesn't even retaliate, and yet they give a unnecessary roughness penalty to both guys, unsportsmanlike conduct, which offsets, which takes away a massive run we just had that was going to set us up for,
I get it.
In the red zone. And then
I get it. Logan, I get it. I understand valid complaints. Here's what I'll say. Let's not lose the forest for the trees. They average 4 yards per play. Like,
I'm just
bad
saying,
offense.
there's 2 big penalties that take it away where we could
Fair.
have gotten into the end zone. The other one I want to get on, they call a hold on a 4th down punt to Cameron Johnston. I love Cameron Johnston. It's weird to love a punter. The Steelers' punting situation has been bad for so long. Cameron Johnston's out for the year. The way his leg bent, I can tell you right now, I'm not a doctor. I have not gotten any actual update about him. The way his leg bent, there's no way that Cam Johnson plays. Not to be confused with Cam Johnson, the power forward for the Nets.
No, of course. Why would we be talking about him right now?
Australian punter Cam Johnson. His leg got bent up, and I was peeved. You don't hit the punter, man. That's a roughing the kicker 10 times out of 10. But because Cam Johnson has black and yellow on his jersey, they called it a hold, and they took it back. His leg's shot. He's an awesome punter. I hope he's back for some point of this year because we're not finding a guy that's solid. But in bigger news, more important news, Kirk Cousins is back. And one of my big takeaways for Atlanta is that he just can't carry this offense right now. Returning off of an Achilles injury, it's a tough matchup against Pittsburgh in this pass rush. He goes for 155 yards, 1 TD to 2 picks. He averages 4.9 yards per pass, and Atlanta musters just 1.2 yards per play in the second half. Both interceptions are bad. He's going through his progressions. He gets panicked, doesn't want to get hit, just trigger happy, gets rid of the ball, right to Deshaun Elliott. Kind of the same thing with Dante Jackson. And Jackson drops another wide open interception from Kirk early in the first quarter. He probably should have had 3 interceptions. But I think Kirk's going to be better as this season goes along. The broadcast mentioned he is just the second quarterback in NFL history to return after an Achilles injury from the season previous, mid-season. The only other quarterback to return that quickly is Trent Dilfer in 2002. He's clearly not at full health. He's trigger happy. He doesn't want to take hits. And so I think he's going to be affected extra by pressure. Last season, Kirk took the highest percentage of snaps from single back of any quarterback in the NFL. And I think his injury severity is reflected by how many pistol and shotgun snaps we saw from him in week 1. I think you're going to see Zach Robinson in this offense ease him back to more of that single back. But I think it's going to have to be Bijan setting up play action, getting him rolling early and often, and letting Kirk eat out of play action. I don't think he can shoulder the load of an entire offense right now. I think it's going to be about mid-season before we really see him kick into gear, getting the ball to London, to Pitts, to these playmakers. There's a ton of playmakers here in Atlanta. It's just a matter of them getting them the ball. And I think it's going to be probably about half the season until we see Kirk really physically able to do that.
It is remarkable, though, that the conversation in Atlanta in a post-Arthur Smith era, by the way, let's not undersell the importance of the Arthur Smith revenge game here, that we're still just talking about them getting their playmakers the ball, man. I mean, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, of course, has the touchdown on an improvised play, but they're still not getting involved at the level that their talent would indicate that they should. And I thought it was a very underwhelming performance from the Atlanta offense. Great performance from the Steelers defense as well, but they have to run the ball better going forward. I'm with you. That's the backbone of this offense. Kirk, it's tough. I mean, his second pick, like that pocket is just collapsing on him. He gets hit as he throws. But as you say, he's not an elevator. He's never been an elevator, but more so than ever before at this stage in his career. He's just going to have to be the guy who executes for you, be a pretty average starter, lean on the run game, lean on the very shiny skill position talent around him that the Falcons just continue to not fully tap into. I mean, Ray McCloud was their leading receiver in this game. I was shocked. I was slandering Ray McCloud in the preseason. I've seen him. He's played for the Steelers. He's played for the Bills. He's never been like a consistent actual receiver. And he made plays in this game. So shout out to him, but it's still weird stuff going on in Atlanta. And I'm not very high on them. I picked them to win the NFC South because it's the worst division in football and they have the most talent, but it's not a team that's going to make any noise, in my opinion. All right, let's move on, Logan, to talk about the other rookie quarterback debut, or I suppose that there were actually 3, but Bo Nix went out there for the Broncos, and after being praised as the savior of the team for a lot of the offseason by a lot of people, it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough stuff for the boy. What did you make of his performance?
Yeah, I mean, the offense was anemic. 3.3 yards per play. The Broncos go 5 of 18 on third downs. They go 2 of 9 on third downs that were 8 or more yards. That may have gotten worse. I turned this game off after the last turnover. Bo Nix looked really, really rattled. He averages just 3 yards per pass, 26 of 42, and he throws for a whopping 138 yards. No TDs, 2 picks. He's got a bad interception in the red zone to Julian Love. He's got a bad interception to Tariq Woolen. And his stat line should have been worse. I mean, the Seahawks gifted him extra opportunities. There's multiple more dropped interceptions. He's off target and inaccurate on a lot of throws. He doesn't seem to have any chemistry with his wide receivers. Like Cortland Sutton looked visibly frustrated on the field.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest concern to me is how average he looked athletically, playmaking and scrambling and getting out of the pocket. I think that was a huge component of the appeal of Bo Nix. Not only is this guy going to be accurate and on time and can get through progressions, well, he didn't do any of that. He also couldn't get out of the pocket and make any plays whatsoever. And another thing, I talk about this with Fields. There are some times when you are running on the move and it's just smarter to take your momentum that you have already established and scramble for a few yards. Bo Nix's tendency is to scramble on the move and still make those throws. He's just not that kind of arm talent and not that accurate on the move like that enough to make those plays. Sometimes it is just smarter to take the 3-4 yard gain that you're going to get on the move than trying to force a football. The Broncos couldn't run the ball effectively either. Williams and McLaughlin total 50 total yards. I'm worried, man. I'm really worried. And also, too, in these third down situations, Nix is consistently throwing way behind the line of scrimmage, not even trying to get to the sticks.
Yeah.
And also, I think the offensive numbers make it look like this offense was better than they were. Yes. I mean, dude, Seattle has 2 safeties. They have a muffed punt that's recovered in Seattle territory. There are 3 first-half big mistakes from Denver that lead to great outcomes. The Bo Nix interception in the red zone leads to a safety. There's a 3-and-out that leads to a muffed punt that leads to points. And there's a 3-and-out that leads to the second safety. So, there's 3 takeaways or 3 bad plays from Denver that actually lead to 8 points for them. And also the historical anomaly that is, there's only been 7 games with 2 safeties since 2000. It's the first time it's happened since 2017. Miami actually forced 2 safeties on Denver themselves in a 35-9 drubbing. But yeah, they end up with 20 points. This offense actually put up 12 points that they earned. It's not even reflective in the score that this offense was as bad as they were. I thought Denver was going to make big, big strides with Bo Nix. It's abundantly clear that he's not as talented as I thought he was coming into this game. It's also abundantly clear, Carson, I don't think Sean Payton and the Broncos trust Bo Nix to operate this offensive playbook. They're going to be really bad again this year. I didn't pick Denver to win a lot of games, but I thought Bo Nix is going to look a lot better than this.
Before I get on to Bo Nix, you mentioned the 2 safeties. One of several anomalies today. Some weird shit just happened today. There were 2 separate instances in 2 different games where there was massive confusion over whether or not there had been a first down that went on into the next play. Twice, the defense thought that they had just gotten off the field on 4th down. The second was Cowboys-Browns. I can't remember the first game. It was actually first down.
Happened in Steelers-Falcons too.
You're right. Exactly. And then this one's not as weird, but Jayden Daniels' helmet came off twice in this game, and I thought that's a little bit odd. Yeah, this was bad from Bo Nix. There's no 2 ways about it. I haven't been the highest on him, but I did think out of this class, he would be absolutely one of the more pro-ready guys. And I did think he looked good in preseason, but also I did try to pump the brakes on some of he's the next great Broncos quarterback, he's the savior, because it's to me, his ceiling has basically been solid starter. He's an okay athlete. As you mentioned, he's a mediocre arm talent. His strength should be just making decisions, taking the easy stuff. That's honestly what I thought he did best in the preseason. And it was just an extremely conservative performance from him and from the Broncos offense. But you mentioned, throwing the ball behind the sticks or inside of 5 yards over and over and over again. That's how you get 138 passing yards on 42 attempts. But the problem is with all of that conservative stuff that isn't leading the offense anywhere, that's leading the offense to just stall out, every time that he did try to air the ball out, throw downfield, it was treacherous. I mean, he has 2 bad picks into double coverage in this game, multiple balls that are hitting Seahawks defenders in the hands. Like, he just looked completely overwhelmed. So for the reasons I mentioned, that I don't think he has the physical tools that give him a particularly high ceiling. Also, he is 24 years old, which does matter in these conversations. I do think he's better than he showed. I do think debuts are hard. I think we saw that from all the rookie quarterbacks today. So I'm not just completely bailing on Bo Nix, but I think the ceiling isn't very high. And the floor in this game was pretty darn low. I think it'll look better going forward, but I'm not sure that he's going to be the guy in Denver. We'll see, though. One game, don't want to overreact. Real quick, what did you make of this for the Seahawks, Logan?
I think I might be a little low on the Seahawks. Now, again, I think that record-wise, I think they're probably going to end up about where I had, somewhere between 7 and 9 wins. I had them at 7 wins, but that kind of seems like the low end. The only thing that I'm really concerned about Seattle is this O-line and pass protection. Geno was kind of running for his life some of this game.
Yeah.
Pressure got home really early. That's not a good sign against Denver. They don't have the best pass rush, and so I don't like that. But there's a lot of things I did like from Seattle in this game. The defense looked much improved. I thought that McLaughlin and Williams were going to run all over them. Does not happen. Seattle buttoned that up really well in this game. I thought the corners played a fantastic game, as did the secondary overall. And the offense came alive in the second half. One, I want to mention actually my final defensive stat. They held Denver to 19 total yards of offense in the third quarter, completely stifled them. But the offense really did look good in the second half. Geno had a solid game and some good drives. Their first TD drive in the first half, Geno's got a beautiful play action throw to Metcalf on time. He has another drop in the bucket to Tyler Lockett, on the sideline. I mean, it is a beautiful ball, a beautiful toe tap from Lockett. And then Geno breaks a big scramble for 34 yards. And so, I mean, the Seahawks have playmakers. Kenneth Walker has a great game, 103 yards and a TD. Charbonnet breaks a 35-yarder for a touchdown off a catch. So I think this defense is going to be improved, probably below average, but closer to average. And Geno has playmakers. He's got Charbonnet. He's got Walker. He's got JSN. He's got Lockett. He's got Metcalf. My one concern is the offensive line. I don't think Geno's going to have a ton of time back there, but he hasn't had a ton of time back there in these past 2 seasons, and he's been efficient, and he's been good enough to win them some games. So I think I was probably a little lower on Seattle than I am after this game. They came alive in the second half, and again, I don't think the score is reflective of how much they dominated Denver today.
Yeah, it was a really weird game. It was a weird game for the Seahawks. I was higher on them than you. I had them as a playoff team. In some ways, maybe I feel a little bit better just because, like, I don't really worry about the offense. Now, I do think that the line is bad. We've known that the line is bad, but like Geno threw an awful pick in this game. I trust his decision-making more than that. Again, I mean, they're just being put in these super compromised positions, right? With the couple of safeties. Like, it was very hot and cold from the offense. I expect them to be better. I did think the defense looked improved, though, and that was the big thing. This was a talented defense last year, but a really underachieving one. You bring in Mike McDonald, great defensive mind, and I did think that there was pretty immediate improvement. We know that the secondary is stacked with talent, but Dodson, an addition from my Buffalo Bills, I thought played quite well. You have a full year of Leonard Williams.
He completely dropped an interception from Bo Nix.
Yeah. I thought that Boye Mafe was good as a pass rusher. Like, I think that there is more talent in this Seahawks defense, a good bit more than was tapped into last year. And I think it's going to be tapped into more this year. So you pair that with an offense that I do think is pretty good, and I feel pretty similarly about them as I did preseason. Let's talk Cowboys-Browns, Logan, because this was kind of billed as maybe the marquee matchup of the daytime slate before Sunday night, and it ended up just being a massacre. What did you take away from this one?
I mean, we can get this out of the way. Deshaun Watson completely sucks.
Let's talk about it.
24-45, 169 yards, 1 TD, 2 picks, 2.7 yards per pass, and a passer rating of 51.1. In the first half, the Cleveland offense did not have a play go for more than 8 yards. Deshaun Watson did not have a completion past 5 yards in the first half. He's got a bad interception to Eric Kendricks, tipped by Parsons at the line of scrimmage. He's got an interception to Trayvon Diggs. He almost threw more. An interception near 3 defenders. Dallas's pressure was getting home. Parsons super disruptive in this one. But, I mean, it's just remarkable to me how off target and inaccurate he is.
Yeah.
Nobody in NFL history can catch some of these passes that Watson is throwing up. Like, I said that to Mark because we were watching the game together. He's a Browns fan, a struggling Browns fan. He had on his Nick Chubb shirt. I had on my Baker Mayfield shirt, man. We were trying to get all the good juju we could get going.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I thought about it. I was like, dude, Randy Moss couldn't catch some of these balls.
No.
Hell, man, Mr. Fantastic could come out
Literally.
here and he couldn't catch some of these passes.
Monstars couldn't catch him.
Dude, and with that, I mean, he was throwing short of the sticks consistently too, just being too conservative. And the Cleveland offense was just abysmal as well. They were 0 of 7 on third downs through the start of the third quarter. They end this game 2 of 15 on third downs overall. And they just put together 2 good drives all game long. They couldn't run the ball consistently. David Njoku leaves this game with an injury. So I'm concerned that the Browns are going to be worse than I thought. And the reason I say this, 8 wins seems like a very tall task with QB play like this. Watson can't even get the ball to his playmakers. Like, if you're going to pick this Browns offense to be average, it's because you think he can get the ball to Cooper. He can get the ball to Njoku. They can run the ball with Ford. The bigger concern to me is, it was an anomaly that this defense was this good and that they overachieved at that kind of level last season with their QB play. It just seems like a really tall task to ask the defense to be that dominant again with QB play like this. And it brings me to the question, Carson, why do you get rid of Joe Flacco? I mean, I understand not wanting a quarterback controversy. It's much like the Steelers, right? Because now you're left at an impasse, a crossroads where you go, do I go with Russ next week or Fields? Fields gets us the win, so it puts extra pressure on Russ to win this. I understand not wanting the controversy, but Joe Flacco was objectively better than Deshaun Watson has ever been in Cleveland last year. And the reality of the situation is the Browns don't have a stable quarterback on the roster. And I emphasize stable because you put Jameis Winston in, he's the next guy up. Jameis Winston is the most, F it, somebody's down there. He's just going to throw the ball up.
Especially if he's watched his morning Looney Tunes. Then you have no idea what he's going to do.
Then he's all riled up and he's feeling a little weird.
Yeah.
Deshaun flat out stinks. I think he's lost all of it. Like, Dallas is a good defense, objectively, but Deshaun stinks. And DTR is nowhere near ready to lead an offense out. Like,
dear God, no.
I think, and we knew this coming into the season with the guaranteed contract, with how bad Deshaun has looked, you're just handcuffed to being a horrible offense unless Jerome Ford in this running game can get going. Deshaun stinks, dude. I think Deshaun is a bottom 5 starting quarterback in the National Football League today, and we can go through the names.
Yeah.
Daniel Jones. I wrote down the entire list. I think I must have erased it, but Daniel Jones, Gardner Minshew. I'm going to see if I can pull the rest of the guys off the top of my head.
Bo Nix. Do you have Bo Nix?
Bo Nix was on my list, and there's 2 more guys that I had penciled in. I'll let you take over.
Think about other bottom tier candidates. Yeah, think about your bottom 5 because I do think
Levis was another one of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think Deshaun has to be in there.
And Deshaun is on there too. There's one more quarterback that I had, but he's in that handful.
Bryce?
And
Did you have Bryce?
Bryce was the last guy that I wrote down, and it's just like the quarterback position is and this is the most lukewarm take you can ever get. When I struggle with picking a football game, when I'm struggling with figuring out what a team's ceiling is going to be for a year, my final question normally is, well, do I trust the quarterback to get them through when the times are tough? No. And I think it was a drastic oversight on my part, taking the Browns to finish 3rd in the division, to win 9 games, when I have no faith in their quarterback. Like, this could very well be a 5 to 6 win team with Deshaun playing at this level. It's just like, I don't care how damn good your defense is. The Steelers are a football anomaly that they do this every single year. The Jets, frankly, with their quarterback play the past 2 seasons, are an anomaly to eke out 7 wins. The Browns defense can be freaking awesome, man. It can be one of the top 5 units in the league. I have to see more from Deshaun if, to make me think that this is going to be a playoff team.
This is very surprising coming from a Steelers fan, Logan. I think if there's anybody who can replicate the formula, it's the Browns. They did it last year.
That's how low I am on Deshaun.
Oh, listen, I think Deshaun is awful. I think he fucking sucks. And that is beyond a shadow of a doubt at this point. And you mentioned the whole Flacco dilemma. First of all, it would have been pretty sketchy to start Joe Flacco for an entire season of football at his age. Like, he literally could not move, and I worry that he could potentially crumple and die and maybe just evaporate on the field if he gets hit too hard. But you know what? He was mostly accurate from inside the pocket. He was taking shots. He was feeding Amari Cooper. He was getting the ball out quickly. He was playing the quarterback position. Deshaun Watson is currently doing something different, something that I'm not sure we've ever seen before, and it's not working. It's not working at all. When it comes to Jameis, listen, man, I get it. It's a roller coaster. He's Mr. 30 touchdowns, 30 picks. Let me see Jameis at this point. Like, you think about the sample we got of him in New Orleans as a starter. Guess what? With a good offensive mind, he was able to execute. He can't be worse than Deshaun. Deshaun has lost his mind. He's lost his ability to throw the ball with any sort of accuracy. He's lost his ability to maintain any sort of poise. And we have a 13-game sample now of him over 3 years just absolutely sucking. There is talent here. Amari Cooper is a damn good wide receiver 1. David Njoku is a damn good receiving tight end. Jerry Jeudy is solid. If he's your third target, I'm good with that. This team should be able to run the ball effectively. And Kevin Stefanski is a great offensive mind. I think you owe it to your team to at least see what you have with Jameis out there, because what you have with Deshaun is a disaster. What you have is one of the absolute worst starting quarterbacks in football, who is very actively and blatantly holding you back. But I don't think they're going to do it, Logan. And it really sucks for Browns fans. Not to say that Jameis would be the savior. I just genuinely believe that he would be better. And this team won 11 games last year with some of the worst quarterback play in football, which is why I did think that they could win 10 games again this year, because I do believe in that defense so much. I believe in Stefanski. I believe in the offensive talent everywhere but the quarterback position. But guess what, man? They gave Deshaun the worst quarterback in history. And the second that they bench him for Jameis Winston, then they concede to everybody that they made one of the worst decisions in football history, that they gave out the worst contract in football history. And guess what? We all know that. And they're only hurting themselves by leaving Deshaun out there. They can't undo it. They can't unpay him. They're not getting value from him just because he's out there on the field. If he's worse than their backup Jameis, who they're paying way less, just because you spent the money, man, it doesn't mean it's a positive asset. He is awful. The money is gone no matter what. You can't bring it back. But they won't view it that way. Teams don't want to concede that sort of disastrous decision-making. And so he's going to stay out there. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just absolutely abysmal. 169 yards on 45 attempts, 2 awful picks, spraying the ball all over the field, holding on to the ball for way too long, as he did last year against a great Cowboys pass rush. He takes 6 sacks in this game. The Browns are going to be able to beat inferior teams with him, because I do believe in the defense that much and so much of the stuff around Deshaun. But yeah, I don't know how I couldn't be lower. And I've been low on Deshaun because, again, he hasn't put anything positive on tape in 2 years. Browns fans, or maybe some Deshaun defenders, if you're a Deshaun defender and you're not a Browns fan, that's pretty weird. I'm not going to lie. But they'd say, oh, he went 5-1 last year. Yeah, he played badly. They were able to win games with everybody at quarterback last year. He sucks, man. And I do think that I'm a little lower on them because, like, this was as bad as it's been from Deshaun, and it's already been bad.
It's like Austin Powers too, man, when he loses his mojo, man. Deshaun Watson has completely
tragic.
Lost all of it. On the other side of this, I don't think we learned much about the Cowboys. I think they beat an inferior football team. That's what the Cowboys have been doing these past couple seasons. I'll give them props on that. They not only beat them, they beat them convincingly. And Micah Parsons is one of the most disruptive players in all of football. I know he was your defensive player of the year pick. And I want to give credit to Myles Garrett, too. Garrett is the only player in the last 6 seasons to have 10 sacks or more in every single year. He was really disruptive in this one early. And I think we've seen it. The 3 guys that are the most consensus guys for DPOY, I think are the most disruptive. Parsons, Watt, and Garrett are just in a different tier of their own. But Parsons was crazy in this game. Immense pressure. And just consistently winning one-on-one. Dallas has been a huge beneficiary of that too. Last season, the Cowboys were 12-1 when their team forced a turnover. They were 0-4 when their defense didn't force a turnover. They were extremely reliant on that. And this is going to be a playmaking defense. As you mentioned, they come up with 6 sacks. It's not just Micah. DeMarcus Lawrence, I thought, had a really good game. I thought they were better stopping the run this game. Eric Kendricks looked really good in that respect. And on the back end, you do force 2 interceptions. Diggs gets 1. Deron Bland is not out there. He's on injured reserve, but he could be back by week 5 against Pittsburgh. I will say I was a little underwhelmed by the Cowboys offense in this debut. Now, ultimately, you don't need anything extra. Turpin runs a punt return TD back. The defense dominated. They only allow 17 points. But the Cowboys offense goes just 4 of 14 on third down. They have 3 3-and-outs in the second half. They mustered just 2 first downs all second half. You don't really get anything special from Dak. He's 19 of 32, 179 yards, 1 TD.
Yeah, one beautiful throw. One beautiful
Not
throw
just one.
Back foot against the blitz.
There's a couple ones. There's a throw that he throws in the bucket to CD over Denzel Ward. Beautiful throw and catch. It's a one-hander by CD. And the one that you're talking about, that's a veteran QB throw. First and 10, pressure bearing down. It's an empty set shotgun. So what this means is Dak has no blocking help whatsoever. It's all wide outs. They're all running routes. And the Browns bring the blitz. Dak picks up that blitz brilliantly and just lobs that ball. The only time you're going to throw that pass is when you know the blitz is coming. There's no safety help over the top. It's just a veteran throw to Brandon Cooks. And there was another one I liked. He's flushed out left, scrambles, and he throws one across his body to Brooks. So that gave you those moments. I just wanted
he was cooking early.
And I understand too, you let your foot off the gas, you're beating the brakes off of a team. So I'm not going to get too critical, but I thought the offense could have been a little better in the second half. In other news, Brandon Aubrey is the best kicker in the NFL, man. I mean, he bangs a 66-yarder that gets called back because of a delay of game that would have tied the longest field goal ever. Shout out Boz for having his great game. I think he is also one of the handful of best kickers in the league, but Brandon Aubrey to me is a cut above everybody else.
They almost sent him out there for 71, bro.
Dude.
Before the Browns called timeout, they had him out there to kick a 71-yarder. He's the GOAT. He's the best in the game right now. I agree.
Only other guy I've ever seen trotted out for that long a field goal is Sebastian Janikowski, and I believe Dennis Allen was coaching that team. So that'll tell you everything you need to know.
Very true. Very true. I thought this was a good performance from the Cowboys. I'm with you. The second half was weird. Offense stalled, but they had just so clearly taken full control of the game. I honestly thought Zeke looked better than I expected. He wasn't great, but I've been very low on Zeke. He hurdled a guy. I don't know. He looked pretty spry out there. He looked pretty quick, pretty athletic for what I was expecting. And Dak did make some great throws early, but this was about the defense. And yes, Deshaun sucks. Absolutely. That's an important disclaimer. But the pass rush was just destructive. And this could be the best pass rush in football this year. Kendricks, as you mentioned, vital in run defense, but also gets you 2 sacks and a pass deflection in this game. Parsons and Lawrence were both eating. Micah on top of the sacks, deflects a ball into an interception. And I do think some of the work that the Cowboys did in this draft was underrated. Like, I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. Everybody hated it. And what a lot of people said was, well, they didn't get better anywhere. Why would this year be any different than last year? I actually think that they're pretty concretely better in a couple areas. First of all, they upgraded Dan Quinn, who I thought was a bad defensive coordinator, to Mike Zimmer, who I think is a very good one. Kendricks is an important add. They should be healthier. They should, as you mentioned, in a few weeks have Bland and Diggs out there together. I also think Dak is just going to play better next time you see him in the playoffs than he did last year. I thought that was an uncharacteristically bad performance. I believe in Dak. I expect him to step up. But also, I thought that they did a really nice job drafting in the trenches and drafting defensively. I thought Overshone, who they took in the 3rd round, was great in this game. He had a sack. Marshawn Nealand, who they took in this year's draft, got a couple quarterback hits. And then you do have Diggs back there. He gets a couple of pass breakups in this game. So the Browns offense was bad because Deshaun was bad, but they also had that man in hell. The Browns had 50% negative plays deep into this game.
Well, negative or back to the line of scrimmage.
Or back to the line of scrimmage.
Crazy.
Unbelievable. So it was just a shellacking. That's why I believe, man. I believe in the defense. I believe in the improvement there, especially when it comes playoff time, being more serious. And I believe in Dak. And I know that nobody is going to be moved by anything the Cowboys do in the regular season. And that's why it's so funny. And every single time I say, they're checking these boxes that I like. Ooh, that was a good win. Everybody's going to say, oh, we've seen this a million times before. Nobody cares.
Well, no, I'm going to laugh at you when they lose in the first round. I'm going to laugh pretty hard.
And what's hilarious, Logan, is how hard I'm going to laugh at you and everybody else when they actually win multiple playoff games. Listen, there's nothing fresh about saying the Cowboys are going to lose early in the playoffs. What's fresh, what's bold, what's avant-garde? Saying they're actually going to win some games. And I think they can do it. But again, I know that everybody's just going to laugh and point until it actually happens. So we'll see if it does. Let's talk Chargers-Raiders, Logan. The Harbaugh debut is a win for the Chargers. What did you take away from this one?
Justin Herbert's finally going to have some help this season. This is the first time ever in Herbert's career that he's thrown for less than 150 yards in a single game, and they win.
Incredible.
17 to 26, 144 yards, 1 TD. That's the Harbaugh Roman way. It's going to be really running game dependent. This is the 7th most rushing yards in a game in the Herbert era. And I think Dobbins and Edwards pack a potent punch. Dobbins is the man. 10 carries, 135 yards. He has 2 monster runs. The second one he breaks is the longest run by a Charger in 2 seasons. They're going to be a run-heavy, defensive-minded team, man, and that's really helpful. That's all you can really give to
everywhere they've sucked in the Herbert era.
Exactly. Under Staley, really impressed with the pass rush. Mack and Bosa got a ton of pressure on Minshew. But along with that, the reason that they're going to have to be a run-heavy, defensive-minded team is because they don't have playmakers. I don't really trust any of the receivers to win one-on-one. I think McConkey is the best of the bunch. Really good route runner, shifty, got good hands. But, I mean, you're looking at Hayden Hurst, probably your second-best weapon. Palmer drops a TD in this game. Quentin Johnston's stat line looks all right, but I think he still sucks.
Yes.
They're going to have to win this way. And, like, Herbert's overcome this situation a lot. I don't think he's going to have to overcome the situation because I think they're better in a lot of areas, but I don't think this is going to be a great season for Herbert. There's just not a ton of weapons here for him to work with. And yeah, I think it's going to be reflected in his numbers. But that being said, I think he's going to have more help just overall. Again, coaching, O-line, defense, running the ball. I think the Chargers are going to be better in all those areas.
They need to let him rip more. I mean, that's always been the most frustrating thing with Herbert when you have these hyper conservative game plans and it's a bunch of short underneath routes. Like that was very much the vibe in this one. As you mentioned, Palmer drops a TD, Quentin Johnston drops a couple balls. He's not good. The receiving core is not good. Although I do like Ladd and he had a nice touchdown. I think he's a really good route runner and will be a very productive player. But like they didn't push the ball downfield at all. I mean, Herbert attempts 26 passes, only goes for 144 yards. I don't think that that's going to tell the story of this season necessarily. I mean, Greg Roman, I will say, he loves establishing the run. There is frustration with him being conservative in the passing game. I remember his days with the Bills, and my God, that man loved calling a screen on 3rd and long more than anybody I've ever seen. But he knows he has Justin Herbert. He has to know that. I think that they will unleash him more. And even though his weapons aren't great, it's also not awful. Like I do believe in Ladd. I think Palmer's solid. And he's the sort of quarterback who I expect to elevate those guys. So it is encouraging how well they ran the ball. Dobbins looked really good. He's been amazing every time he's been healthy in his NFL career. But just after multiple major injuries, I was worried about him looking the same. I thought it probably just doesn't make sense to bet on that, unfortunately, but he played a really good game. I will say the breakaway run, the long run that he had, It was a bit concerning to me that he couldn't sustain his top speed because he started slowing up pretty quickly and got chased down. But he goes 10 carries for 135 yards. Like, you can't complain about that. And I did like, especially the pass rush defensively, as you mentioned, Mack and Bosa wreaking some havoc. The Raiders offense is weak, but this is the least Herbert's ever had to do in a win. So that's good. I also do just think that the Raiders played a very bad football game, though. I mean, I think that this offense is awful. Gardner had a rough showing, threw a bad pick to seal this game. Earlier, threw a ball backwards to nobody when he clearly thought that there was going to be some sort of bubble screen, and there simply was not. And it looked like he wanted that ball to stay in his hand, but that thing was already going. So, like, that was a brutal turnover. Their line's not good. And I thought Antonio Pierce flubbed this game, like, just really some nonsensical decision making early in this game. Goes for it on fourth down on Vegas's own 41.
Yeah,
which
dude.
was
Yeah.
unnecessary, especially when you know you're a limited offense. Sets up a free field goal for the Chargers. They gained 5 yards, and this is a game where points were not easily come by. But then later, he doesn't go for it on 4th and 2 in Charger territory. Down 16-7. He takes the field goal then. Okay, make it a one-score game. In the red zone, I would go for it. I would try to make that a touchdown opportunity. He doesn't. Then, with 7 minutes to go, down 6 on the Chargers 42 on 4th and 1, 7 minutes left in the game, down 6, punts, which is truly one of the most cowardly, one of the most unjustifiable coaching decisions I can think of. It made 0 sense, and that was the football game right there. Like, man, maybe you're going to have one more chance to score, right? You're in position to do it right here, right now. You have to take that. He didn't. And then, just as sort of a beautiful, poetic ending to this all, Jack Jones gets in a fight as everything unravels, which, if you've followed Antonio Pierce's career, you followed ASU football, you know it's really vintage stuff. So just one more takeaway from this game for me, and I've been saying this, Logan, I think the Antonio Pierce era is going to end a lot worse than most people think it's going to end. I think there's a lot of optimism there because he comes across as a hard-nosed guy. Raiders culture, they definitely improved under him last year. That's all good. I do not think he is a good leader of an organization when it comes down to the tough moments, when it comes down to him individually taking accountability. I don't trust his decision-making in meaningful spots like this. He can get you fired up for a game. Sure, he appeals to players, but is the discipline there? Is the IQ there? I'm just not sold, man. I've seen Antonio Pierce coach before, and it didn't end well. So I'm skeptical still.
Yeah,
all right.
I have a few more things on this game real quick. I thought it was poor game management by Pierce, but I do think the Raiders are going to be better. In the first half, they hold the Chargers to 6 points. They allow only 83 total yards. They bottle up Herbert for the second fewest first half passing yards in his career. They hold LA to a field goal after the Minshew fumble. They held LA scoreless after the White fumble. They almost get a pick on Herbert. And I thought his pass rushes are really creative. I think this is a good team that's going to be able to have a really good ability of rushing the quarterback. Now, defense. They got gashed against the run, 6.5 yards per carry. And it's just abundantly clear that Minshew is not capable of carrying this offense. Like, when they need him to make plays, he's not going to be able to. But I didn't think it was an abysmal game for Minshew. Like, he got the ball to Adams. He got the ball to Bowers. He got the ball to Jacoby. He just has to protect the ball better. They lose the turnover battle 3-0. White fumbles on the breakaway run. I want to give props to Madison, too. Madison had a big catch for a TD in this game where he hurdles a defender and breaks a couple of tackles. That was a good TD by Minshew, but that's the formula that the Raiders are going to have to win games on, man. It's going to have to be a strong defense. They're going to have to run the hell out of the ball. It's just a lot to ask from Minshew. And so I think the Raiders are going to be better. I don't want to overblow this, but I did think it was a poorly managed game by Antonio Pierce. That's a Mike Tomlin with Duck Hodges under the helm kind of call. You don't punt the ball in that situation, right? You punt the ball. Especially what I didn't understand about that too is maybe in the first half, I understand that call when your defense had locked the Chargers up. The Chargers had been marching on you the past 2 drives. Like, at that point, I just think you have to have the awareness to know that we have to score right now. We might not get the ball back. Like, we have to
Absolutely.
capitalize on this opportunity.
And also, Logan, in that situation, the very fact that you don't trust your offense is why you have to go for it. Because is it easier to get 1 yard and then sustain a drive once you're already in opponent territory, as opposed to having to get the ball back with less time on the clock and then drive the full length of the field again? Like, this is as good a position as you're going to be in with your limited offense. Try to finish the drive. It was just a catastrophic decision, in my opinion. All right, let's go rapid fire through these last few games, Logan, because now we're really getting into the mud. Saints-Panthers, what'd you take away? This was just a bludgeoning.
Shout out Derek Carr, man. I mean, Derek Carr had an awesome freaking game, dude. I've been the biggest Derek Carr hater for a minute. 200 yards, 3 TDs, beautiful home run ball to Rashid Shaheed. Great play in the red zone to scramble out right, dot up Foster Moreau. He's got another beautiful throw to Taysom Hill in the end zone. Hill drops that TD. And the other big takeaway, 2 things. Bryce Young may be a complete and utter bust. 13 of 30, 161 yards, 2 picks, sub 33 passer rating. He throws a pick on the first play of the game. He's got an inexcusable overthrow on the run. And the thing is, man, he lacks NFL caliber physicals. He's not fast. He doesn't have elite size. There's very little play extension ability because of these limitations. And he's just been inaccurate and off target. Like, I flexed my guns for picking the Pats Bengals upset. I also picked the Panthers to win this freaking game. I couldn't have been more wrong. The Panthers are going to be one of the worst teams in the league again, Carson. I think they might be the worst.
Probably the worst. Yeah.
Couldn't move the ball at all. 1 and 10 on third downs. Offensive line was abused. They can't run the ball. They can't throw the ball. 3.9 yards per pass, 2.9 yards per rush. The defense got marched on, 6.1 yards per play, 8 yards per pass, and they got scored on every trip to the red zone. I mean, dude, David Tepper may have set this franchise back.
Oh,
A decade? I don't know, man. I think the Panthers are in this hellscape where I don't know, man. They have the worst future of any team in the NFL, I think.
It's among the catastrophic front office decisions that we've ever seen. I mean, across all sports that I pay attention to. It's an absolute disaster to trade up such a bulky set of assets to then take a quarterback at number 1 who is very, very clearly the wrong choice, very clearly inferior, not just to CJ, I think pretty clearly inferior to Anthony Richardson. And then the next year, have the worst record in football. So you would have had the number 1 pick, and that is a generational quarterback prospect. Like, there are certain moves that I can think of, like, of course, the Nets trade in the NBA, right? Where they just mortgaged their future for old ass KG and Paul Pierce, which made no sense. But at least there, it's like, okay, the timeline they chose just didn't make sense. I guess that's not better. That arguably is just even more stupid. But what really hurts here is, like, they were going to try to rebuild either way, and they just completely flubbed it. And now they have to watch these other extremely talented quarterbacks with better assets, some of which they got from the Panthers. Like when you're talking about the Bears situation, just rough stuff, man. But that's what this game is about. Props to the Saints. They played well. This is about Carolina being a disaster. I picked them to win 4 games. God knows why. Perhaps I was possessed by the spirit of Mother Teresa and a generosity within me. Perhaps I wanted Matthew Sponauer to smile for once in his life. Yikes, man. Yeah, this is the worst team in football. And what I feel like we can say, and maybe you think this is premature, I don't know. I don't think it's going to work out for Bryce in Carolina. That's not to say that he can't find some success elsewhere, because I do not think that he is a talentless quarterback. And throughout last year, I defended him some because I was like, this is a terrible situation. Not to say that he would be CJ in Houston, but if you dropped CJ in Carolina, he wouldn't look the same. And while I still think that's true, I think Bryce has many flaws of his own. And I think, not to be overly reactive, but like, we won't see a player like him drafted number 1 overall in a long time, if ever again. Like, what we talk about with Richardson, what we talk about all the elite players dictating the NFL at the quarterback position, they are physical freaks. They are big. They are strong arm. They can move. And Bryce can move, but he doesn't really like to scramble, to extend plays, and he's small and he doesn't have a strong arm. And I just worry for him, man. I mean, he gets beat up physically again in this game, and he throws bad picks. It's terrible. They can't run the ball. They can't protect. They have a weak receiving core. I thought you'd see some improvement with Leggett and Deontay Johnson. Maybe that's why I picked them to win 4 games, but it's still a weak group, and their defense is abysmal. So sorry, Panthers fans. It's dark, man. It's really, really dark. It's also dark for the Giants, Logan, who are also on the short list of worst teams in the league. They get shellacked by the Vikings 28-6. What'd you take away from this one?
Yeah, they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league, too. Offense has 3.5 yards per play in this one. Defense allows 6.1 yards per play. 111 total rushing yards. Daniel Jones on my list is a bottom 5 starter in the league. I recited it earlier. That includes Watson, Nix, Young, and Minshew. 42 pass attempts, 22 completions, 186 yards, 2 picks, 3.5 yards per pass. A pick 6 to Van Ginkel at the line of scrimmage. An interception in the red zone. Daniel Jones sucks. Newsflash. Who knew? That guy's a bum. Dable and Stefanski both said after the game that they're not going to entertain putting in the backup quarterback at all this or right now. And like Dable basically said, that's not on my mind at all. Brian Dable, my friend, Daniel Jones is going to test your patience. I only think it's a matter of time until Drew Lock is in this game, man. Yeah, Danny Dimes sucks. On the positive note, though, unquestionably, this is going to be the best season of Sam Darnold's career.
For sure.
Admittedly, the bar is not that high.
No, it's not.
Last year in Carolina was probably his most efficient. He had the highest passer rating of his career. But 2019,
2 years ago.
No, last year, right?
Last year he was with the Niners. He was.
That's true. 2 years ago. 2019, he posts career highs in TDs, yards, and completion percentage. That's 19, 3,000 yards, 62% completion. In this game, really efficient, 19 to 24, 13.2 passer rating, nearly 80% completion. He leads a 99-yard TD drive, and the Vikings go for it on 4th down. He throws a beautiful ball to Justin Jefferson on a slant. It's not like a mind-blowing throw, but he had to throw it with real accuracy. Like, he fit it in a really tight window. And ultimately, there's so much skill position talent around him. Jefferson, Jones, Addison. Darnold is not going to have to elevate this offense. This offense is going to elevate him. And I think he's got a good defense behind him. So I think this is going to be the best situation of Darnold's career. I think they'll find their way to some wins this year. He'll be, again, I think this is going to be the best season of his career.
Yeah, it will.
So I'm really happy for Darnold. This was a really solid debut for him.
This will be a career year for Darnold. That's really never been a question. However, I have still been on the side of Sam Darnold is not good, and him being able to play a mediocre starting quarterback football in a good offensive situation with really talented skill position players, really good running back, good coach. Like, that doesn't change that. But I don't think he's at the level of awful where, like, you're going to constantly be shouting at the sky and ruining the day that you ever signed him. His problem's never been a lack of arm talent, though. I mean, he's always thrown a pretty ball. You've always been able to say that about Sammy D. His problem is seeing ghosts and making some panic decisions with the football. And I do think that that'll still happen at a couple points this season, but I do think that he'll be okay for them. Aaron Jones is still awesome, by the way. I want to shout him out. I thought that was a really good pickup for the Vikings. He is just a really complete, really efficient running back. With Darnold, again, we got to see him tested more than this before, everybody buys all the stock back. This is the New York Football Giants we're talking about, who were never going to win in those jerseys, man. I mean, listen, I love paying homage to the old folks as much, maybe more than anybody, but the logo on the field works for me. You can't have them playing in the 1920s uniforms. It looks out of place. They should have leather helmets. It looks weird with a modern world around them. Hideous. And they do have Daniel Jones as their quarterback, so they're just awful. Maybe they'll win 3 games. Go Giants. All right, last game, Logan. We go from your nemesis, Daniel Jones, who, by the way, we had some hilarious conversations about with Drew Velez. If you want to go check out our episode with him, he is a Danny Dimes stan, and our thoughts and prayers are with him right now. Let's talk about Jayden Daniels' debut against the Bucs. I was just hinting at how much you love Baker. He's your darling baby boy, and he balled out. But let's start with the last rookie quarterback to debut today. What'd you think of his performance?
Yeah, I thought it was a good game. 88 rushing yards, 2 TDs. He's really elusive, man, and just good at escaping pressure.
Yeah.
Like, it's abundantly clear to me. I mean, he does have that trait. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's why Fields still has a job in this league. He's like an A1, A+ rusher of the football. Like, you're going to need to put a QB spy on Jayden often. The Bucs didn't, and he was able to have his way on a lot of plays. He's just really fast. I thought it was an efficient passing day too, 17 to 24, 184 passing yards. You know, he wasn't pushing the ball crazy downfield, but he was making quick decisions. He was throwing underneath. And ultimately, I mean, the Commanders are getting blown out, you know, towards the end of this game. So it's kind of garbage time, but he didn't have any colossal screw-ups. He didn't have any balls that were like really bad, and he was really efficient. And I liked how he looked on the ground. I mean, when you have that kind of trait, there's a reason that you can stick around or be a really good starter in this league. And I was lower on Jayden Daniels, but I mean, he looks a far sight better than Bo Nix. He looks more comfortable than Bo.
Yeah,
I thought it was a good debut against a good defense for Jayden Daniels. You know, nothing spectacular, but you know, nothing that makes me scream and say, "Oh, this guy's not an NFL QB." He looks like he belongs, and I had a question about that with Jayden. You know, coming into the draft, coming into this season, I do think Jayden belongs. I think he's a starter in this league.
I definitely preferred Drake May to him, and I do stand on that take. But I think that I may have slightly underestimated how much of not a weapon, but a fail-safe just being able to run like this is for a young quarterback, right? When things do break down around you, you don't have to stand in the pocket and wait for your untimely demise or force a bad decision with the football. You just take off and you're going to get 7 yards. I mean, Jayden Daniels is that sort of freak rushing talent. As a scrambler, it's him, it's Lamar, it's Anthony Richardson now, it's Kyler, it's Fields. Like, that's the top tier. He is crazy fast, crazy elusive, takes a lot of hits, of course, and we'll see how that impacts his health throughout the season. Hopefully he stays healthy. As a thrower, I did think there was some inaccuracy there. Missed on a deep ball. I think he throws a nice deep ball, but missed on one today. Misplaced a couple screen passes. I think he had some of those natural rookie debut jitters. I think the passing attack is going to be limited, but my God, he can run. And he's obviously not incapable as a passer. He's accurate. So I thought it was a strong debut from him. I mean, he played fine. He was great running the football, and the other two quarterbacks were definitely not fine. They were something below that. Logan, I'll allow you to rain some love on your darling quirked up white boy Baker now. I mean, what do you even have to say at this point? MVP? Are we starting the MVP push?
If he keeps up like this, I mean, the Commanders don't have really a good secondary at all, but 24-30, 289 yards, 4 TDs.
That quarterback has aura. That's all that matters.
Exactly. So composed, so confident. He's got one hell of a playmaking group here, man. Mike Evans and him have a special connection. Chris Godwin had a big game. Rachaad White is one of the best receiving backs in football. And he had a little bit of play extension there where the Commanders got some pass rush home to disrupt him, and he extended some plays. I do think the Commanders defense, they've got a lot of new fresh faces in here. I think it's going to take them maybe half the season to really gel together, to get like acclimated. I think offenses that have been together for a minute and have an identity and a formula are probably going to eat on them. I don't like the secondary. I don't like anything about the Commanders defense, to be honest. That's why a guy like Baker Mayfield, as much as I love him, can have a day like this, right? I mean, he did something comparable to this to the Packers last year. He had a perfect passer rating.
Played a really good game against the Texans.
Yeah. And so it's like Baker can have games like this, but against the Commanders secondary was just getting fried by Baker and them. But yeah, I mean, this is the level that I'm not saying you should expect this kind of play out of Baker Mayfield, but he's an average to above average QB. Like, he can have games like this. And I trust him so much more than a lot of other starters in the league, man. I trust Baker so much to make plays and to get the ball to his playmakers, man. I really believe in Baker.
I was just watching the Johnny Football Untold documentary very recently. And as I watched Baker today do just such a boisterous first down signal after scrambling, I thought Baker is doing what Johnny Football never could at
Exactly.
this level.
Exactly.
And it's really beautiful. I mean, this is a quirked up white boy with more confidence than you've ever seen in any individual, but he's actually doing it. He's actually doing it at the
He's about
NFL
it.
level.
He's about it.
He is about it, dude. Shout out to Baker. I mean, he is absolutely stamped as a solid quarterback. I think that the only question about the Bucs paying him is just like, where do the Bucs want to be in a couple years? Like, do they want to just be in a hard launch rebuild? It's not about paying him that dollar value. I think he's justified it. He's solid. This team is going to be fine. I don't have a ton to add. They beat up on one of the worst teams in football, but I was glad to see Baker ball out, man. Last year, you and I, we were on opposite sides of the Baker thing, and I've moved past that. I've grown as a person. I've learned so much, and now I can just appreciate what he's doing out there, and it's much healthier and it's much better for everyone. Well, Logan, we're just getting started here. We have about 4 hours left. No. Any final thoughts before we end the marathon week 1 pod?
Nas Reed,
man. Shout out to anybody who stuck with us for this all. Hope you enjoyed. If you just listened to our segment about your team, that's okay too. But hope you guys had a wonderful first NFL Sunday and hope that you enjoyed our analysis of it. We have so much more football still to come. Can't wait to talk about it all. And it's all going to be right here. If you want all of our season preview content, I don't know why you'd want that at this point, but go ahead, enjoy it. It's good stuff. If you want our reactions to the Thursday and Friday night games, that's all on our YouTube channel, and you can listen to it across audio platforms. We've got NBA content, we've got trivia stuff, full shows, and YouTube as well. If you want our short form trivia content, graphics from the show, clips from the show, follow us across social, TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh. You can join our Discord. The link to that is at the link tree across our social media bios. And if you want to check out our merch, you can do so at thevolume.com. So appreciate all you guys. As always, I've been Carson Breber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.